It would be nice.
Somebody here.
Yes. Yeah. People can make it. Is this year they want to
Okay, let's get started, everybody. The time is approximately 6 p.m. and April 17th, 2025. Farragut Municipal Planning Commission will now begin. Good evening to those of you in attendance and online. Thank you all for attending tonight's Farragut Municipal Planning Commission meeting. My name is Scott Russ. I'm the chairman that will be conducting tonight's Planning Commission meeting. We appreciate that each of you has taken the time from your schedules to either attend or view tonight's meetings to observe how our town government works. All Farragut Municipal Planning Commission meetings are public notice per Tennessee state law, and that's TCA 8-44-103. All Planning Commission meetings are streaming on the Farragut YouTube channel, and also links to the recordings may be found on the Town of Farragut website. Those of you in attendance should be able to pick up a copy of the agenda at the door when you came in this evening. If you're not able to attend in person or viewing from home, you'll be able to see the agenda posted on the Town of Farragut website. For any persons in attendance who would like to address this Planning Commission concerning an item on tonight's agenda, if you haven't already, please pick up a blue card at the door when you came in and write your name, address, and the agenda item number that you wish to comment on. We will also reserve time at the end of the regular business meeting for residents' comments on non-agenda subject items, which will also require that you fill out a blue comment card with your name, address, and topic of your comments. On each agenda item, I'll ask that the town staff of Farragut for residents' input. During this time, any Farragut resident wishing to speak to the Planning Commission on that specific agenda item may do so for up to 5 minutes. After being recognized, please proceed to the podium microphone in order to be viewed and heard by all. In order to conduct efficient, business-like meetings, the town has adopted rules for how its meetings will be conducted. Primarily, these rules are designed to keep the meeting progressing along and assure that all points of view are heard and considered, and to provide common courtesy to everyone. We ask that you observe the established meeting rules when addressing members of the town staff or members of the Planning Commission. If you would, at the beginning of your presentation, please state your name and address for the record. We ask that you address your questions to myself, and if necessary, I'll direct your question to another commissioner or the staff to address your questions. Once you've given your input, please return to your seat. We also ask that persons speaking avoid the use of improper language and profanity. Please only address the agenda issue that you're speaking to. Strive to present original viewpoints and avoid redundancy. We also ask that you also stay on topic of that specific agenda item. And please remember, we're here tonight doing the people's business, and it's a very important responsibility for all of us. Now, with that said, I'll ask that if you're able, please stand for a moment of silence for prayer and reflection, to be followed by a recital of the Pledge of Allegiance to our country's flag. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Mark, I've established that we have 9 members, a full house tonight present, and therefore we have a quorum for tonight's proceedings. Mark, are there any amendments to tonight's agenda?
No, sir.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a move to approve that's been seconded. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Noes? No noes. Mark, let the record show that the agenda as posted has been approved. Are there any amendments to the minutes from the March 20th Municipal Planning Commission meeting?
No, sir.
Move to approve.
Do we have a second?
Second.
With a motion and a second, all those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Yes. Noes? No noes?
Abstain.
I'm abstaining too.
Same.
Me too.
Hold on.
Mark, let the record show that the minutes from the March 20th meeting have been approved with 5 yes and 4 abstentions. Tonight, looks like we have 5 business items to review for discussion in our public hearing. I'm going to start off with the first agenda item, and that would be discussion and public hearing on approval of a site plan for site and building elevation modifications to the existing development at 11820 Kingston Pike for a new office space for Turner Homes, currently located at 11543 Kingston Pike. 2.39 acres, zone C1, Turner Homes applicant.
Yes, this is at the, right across from Ingalls, the car wash at Ingalls on the south side of Kingston Pike. It's a 11820 Kingston Pike. It was most recently a bank, and then before that it was originally built as an O'Charlie's restaurant. And now the applicant is wanting to use this building as an office for Turner Homes. Most of the modifications are to the building, and from a staff's perspective, they help modernize the building and kind of customize it to the user. So this is kind of a site plan of what's out there now. There's a drive-through lane that serviced the old bank. They're wanting to enclose that, make it part of the building. And I'm going to pull up some elevations. This is kind of their proposed elevations if you're looking at the building from 2 different sides. So the area on the east side that's a drive-through will be enclosed. They are modifying the tower element. They're also modifying some windows, upgrading the entrance to the building. And on the south side of the building, there's kind of a blank wall section with stucco. You can see it down here on the lower left image. And they're wanting to put garage doors back there, which is kind of a something that a number of sites have been doing recently. It's just a very practical application. It also adds kind of an architectural interest to that elevation of the building. They're only making some minor modifications to the actual parking lot. They're going to be restriping it, maybe taking out some of the dead or dying landscaping and kind of revamping some of that. So really just an overall upgrade of both the building and the site. So the staff is recommending approval of this site plan as submitted.
Okay.
Move to approve.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Mark, are there any persons signed up to comment on this item?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. And it looks like we do have the representative present and at the podium. If you could please give us your name and your address for the record.
It's not on.
I just turned it on. Hello. Hey.
Yeah, you can.
Forrest Bennett, Turner Homes, 11543 Kingston Pike.
Good evening, Forrest. How are you tonight?
Doing okay. How about yourself?
I'm doing well, thank you. Do you have any flavor you'd like to add or make any comments or run through? It looks like we got some things up here, and looks like you've got a board with the material board.
Do you want me to bring it up there?
Sure, if you brought it this far.
Yeah, you can just,
A few more feet.
pass it. You can just walk it around and let
Yeah,
them see
we'll
it.
just
Yeah.
walk around.
Forrest, go ahead and adjust the mic there if you don't mind.
Sir.
So that's a stain over the existing brick, right?
Oh, correct, yes. We, at a recommendation, we included a picture of the stain on the existing brick.
Okay.
And then these are samples. We were able to take a few bricks off the building and stain them.
Okay, so that's what you guys are going to do for the whole building, is
Yes.
stain it that color? That's
Yes.
pretty.
It looks nice.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
This will
pretty.
be the wood look siding over the drive-through, and then some paint colors.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think that looks nice.
Okay, yeah, that looks great.
Yeah, nice improvement.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, I'm going to go ahead and open it up on the floor. Do any of the commissioners have any questions or comments for the applicant at this time? You've all had a chance to review the documents in the packet. I'm just going to go down the line and see if you'll nod. So we do have a motion on the floor to approve and a second. Now I'll ask if the motion stands as presented, discussion has been completed. I'll ask all those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Yes. Noes? No noes. Let the record show that the agenda item has been approved.
Hey, Chairman,
unanimously.
who made the second on that? Is Louise made the
I made
motion?
the motion.
Yeah,
Jeff?
no, I did, but I think I may have typed to somebody else down there.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I missed that. Sorry about that. Okay. I got it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Forrest.
All right, thank you.
Agenda item number 4 is discussion and public hearing on approval of a preliminary plat for the West Mills development, 12413 and 12501 Kingston Pike, and parcel is 10.02, tax map 152 for 16 house lots, 2 commercial lots, 14.5 acres, currently zoned R1, R2, and C1. Batson, Himes, Norvell, and Poe applicant.
Okay, this item has come before you a couple of years ago as a concept and different access requests. Originally, they were wanting to access subdivision from Champions Point in Fox Den, kind of back here on the east side of the property. But that was not supported by the Planning Commission, so they are bringing the access for the subdivision in at this traffic signal for Old Stage Road and Kingston Pike. The package includes like a hypothetical layout of the site, the commercial zone portion along Kingston Pike, but that's actually not part of what we're asking to you to approve this evening. This is only for the residential component of this property. They will be submitting a site plan that will be coming to you all dealing only with the commercial portion. Obviously, the road portion is part of the approval that goes through the commercial. There was also a traffic signal plan that was in the project that the town engineer has reviewed and was in agreement with the suggestions that they made with the traffic signal plan. The subdivision itself has 16 house lots. It has a detention basin kind of in the west part of the property. There's a walking trail that stubs into the property from Dollar General, and they'll be extending that throughout the east side of the project and tying it into Champions Point. There'll also be a sidewalk that will be built on the west side of the road coming in from the traffic signal, and there'll be a sidewalk it will tie into on the south side of the road that they'll be building for the subdivision. So that's kind of an overview of this. The signal plan, like I said, was in the packet. Mostly what that traffic impact study and signal plan recommended was just some signal adjustments and then some pedestrian safety measures, because there will be a couple of crosswalks added. If you remember, we changed our traffic impact study requirements a few months ago to give consideration to pedestrians, and they have specifically done that in this traffic impact study, which we appreciate that. So that's a couple of things, and then the third thing was just reminding the developer and the town, when we review these things, to make sure there's not any visibility obstructions at the intersections with either signage or landscaping, things that could obstruct visibility. So there are a couple of variances that they're requesting in relation to this preliminary plat, and we'll need to act on those first before we act on the preliminary plat. The first variance is to not have more than one entrance and exit into the subdivision and out of the subdivision. Because we did not approve access on Champions Point, they don't have any other option but to have one access point, because there's already developed house lots on the north side I mean, they really don't have any place to, have a second access. There's also fewer than 30 house lots, and obviously the trip generation is going to be pretty minimal. For 16 house lots, you're looking at about 160 trips a day for the subdivision itself. So for those reasons, the staff would support that variance. There's also a variance.
Variance, Mark, if it is it require a variance if it is under 30?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
just one of the parameters that you all can grant a variance based on, yeah. The second variance is, and we talked about this with the concept plan, was a reduction in the street width requirement from 26 to 24 feet. And the staff is also in support of this because of the number of house lots involved. It's a dead-end street. There's not a lot of trip generation. So, a 24-foot street would function, very well in this particular context. So the staff supports both of the variances, and we will need to act on those separately first, and then we'll take action on the
Okay.
preliminary plat.
Okay, before we move on to the variances, then review and voting on the variances, do you have anybody signed up to speak on this agenda item? Agenda item number 4?
No, I don't.
No. Okay, so I think the first way we go about this is address the first variance of the requirement of having two versus, or having one egress access point into the subdivision. So.
I'll make a stab at it, Mr. Chairman, if you're all right with that.
Thank you.
Motion to approve a variance with a single entrance versus two due to the municipal code and the number of lots.
Okay, thank you, Noah. Do we have a second
Second.
on the floor? We have a second on the floor. And with that, first of all, before we go to a vote on this, I'll ask that, do any of the commissioners have any questions or concerns for either the applicant or the staff regarding this variance? Mayor Williams?
Yes, Mark, this looks like that's going to be a boulevard going in and out.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So we do have 2 lanes, one separated by divided section. Okay.
Yeah, it's part of their streetscape plan was to have a boulevard, and they'll have some street trees along
I
the.
just want to make sure it was in the record.
Yeah.
That's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Do any other commissioners have any questions or concerns or anything for the applicant or Mark? Okay, so we, for the first variance to allow for one entrance into the subdivision, we have a motion and a second on the floor. I'll ask all those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Noes? No noes. Mark, let the record show that the variance has been approved unanimously. Okay, and so moving on to the second variance, and that's to reduce the street width required by the town from 26 feet to 24-foot width. Would anybody like to take a stab at giving
I'll
us a
do it.
motion?
I'll move to approve a variance from the street width requirement to reduce the street width from 26 to 24 feet for reasons provided by staff.
And thank you, Louise. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have 2 seconds, double seconds. Okay. Again, are there any commissioners that have any concerns with the street width going into the, or for the subdivision from 26 to 24 feet? Okay, thank you. We do have a motion on the floor and a second to approve a variance from street width of 26 feet to 24 feet width. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Yes. Noes? No noes? Mark, let the record show that the variance to approve street width from 26 to 24 feet has been approved unanimously. Okay, so now we'll need a motion and a second on the preliminary plat discussion of the West Mills development.
Motion to approve the plat as presented.
Second.
With the
Subject
subject to,
tos.
staff subject to, okay.
With the subject tos.
Second.
Okay, I got that. Thank you, Louise. again, we don't have anybody signed up, so we have the representative here. Is there anything that you'd like to add for the record, or?
No, I was just
Pretty
going to
straightforward.
answer questions if you'll have them.
Fair enough. Very good.
Need your name?
My name is Dylan Jackson. with
Dylan
Batson-
Jackson? Good.
With Batsenheim, Snowville and Cove. And then do y'all need the address as well?
Okay, thank you, Dylan. Let me just ask the commissioners if there are any questions or comments regarding this development. I'll start down here. Commissioner Pinchuk, Commissioner Green.
I do. I have a
Okay,
couple of
Commissioner
questions.
Green, you're open.
I looked at the drawing that showed the, where the mailbox station is, and it looks like you have no sidewalk available up to the mailbox station. Wouldn't that be kind of a good idea? Because you have
Yeah, we can
people,
definitely,
first of all, people driving up to the mailbox, plus whatever else. So I would ask that you take a look at that,
yeah, for sure.
okay? The other comment I have is that I wouldn't be surprised if you have people that end up going up the street by mistake. So do you have plans to have some prominent signs that say this is no outlet, this is a residential area, all
Yes,
that?
sir.
And where would you do that?
I think we would probably do it at the entrance into the residential part, like once you get to the end of the commercial part, because you can, exit into the commercial areas if you're not trying to go down the residential road. But we were gonna probably do like a dead end sign ahead.
It looks like your boulevard extends into the commercial a little bit there by 50 feet or so, so, yeah, kind of have to be out there. Because once they get on the boulevard, you kind of got to go make a U-turn and come back out. And especially if you have trucks that go up there by mistake, then you may really have a problem. The traffic light system that is planned, I presume is compatible with the new system that Farragut is in the process of installing. Is that a fair statement?
I would believe so. Canon and Canon did the signal design. I believe they have been in coordination with that. Is that correct?
Yeah, they're pretty familiar with our ATMS project and all that, so. And Darrell did look at this and look at the traffic impact study, and he was in agreement with their recommendations.
And my last comment is, Mark, is this plat, the one you just had up there, is that for this residential only?
It's for the residential house lots, and it would obviously create 2 commercial lots because there'll have to be a public street bisecting those. So it's for the street, like most preliminary plats, it's for new public improvements, the street, sidewalk, the house lots, the grading and drainage, detention. I think the detention
The
is,
reason I'm asking is over in the notes, there was a reference to C1, and I didn't know if that needs to stay in there and just not be on this plat. Or in the notes over there, note number
number 1 about,
number 2. I can't read the numbers this time. 1, 2, 3, 4. Looks like 5, I guess it is.
just include a note. That's one of the staff subject twos, is including a note that the improvements shown in the
Okay.
portion of the
That'll-
land zone commercial are just
Yeah,
conceptual.
Number 5 just says the property is zoned C1, R1, and R2, so it's just showing what's zoned what.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's
I thought
true.
There was
It
another,
is,
there were other notes that were gone in reference to that. That's why I thought, anyway, that's the only questions I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, John. Commissioner Pavlin, do you have any questions for the applicant or Mark?
I don't.
Vice Chairman Meyer?
Yes, sir.
Mayor Williams?
None.
Noah?
Yes, sir, I do, Mr. Chairman. The town of Farragut over the past 10 or 15 years has been slowly changing out the support arms. These are the signal support arms at the intersections to black, more decorative support arms. Would it look, right now, they're the old galvanized support arms that are there, that are handling basically that 3-way intersection. Would it make sense, instead of, we know that if the applicant goes through and puts the old galvanized in, we're gonna have to, at some point, tear it all down, throw it away, and put in the new decorative black ones? Would it make sense to go ahead and at least do that one out of the black, or maybe even us pay the upgrade or something? Like, it just seems like it's sure a waste of money and time to put something up which we know is going to come down at some point. when we're trying to upgrade all of our signal arms supports. And so I know this is more of a Daryl, I don't know if Daryl's here, but more of a Daryl question, but it personally, it wouldn't bother me if that side was black and the others were galvanized, knowing that we're going to swap them out eventually, but, you know, aesthetically, some other people might not like to mix and
No,
match
which
it.
one are you talking about?
Well, I'm talking about the new signal arm, so there's going to be a new signal arm that's going to be on the south side of Kingston Pike at Old Stage Road.
Okay.
And so by looking on the plans, it looks like it's going to be a matching signal arm of what's there, which is the old non-decorative galvanized signal arms.
Okay.
It seems like this is a great opportunity, and this is more of a board mayor and alderman question, because they're the ones that get to decide how we spend our money. But it seems like this would be a great opportunity to, you know, maybe go ahead and get that particular intersection on track to upgrade the signal arms. But it just, again, I just throwing out food for thought. I don't want to hold up the developer, but it just seems like this is a good opportunity to be able to do that instead of having to go put up a signal arm that we know we're gonna take right back down at some point. So again,
Just to give consideration that they use the black and on the one that they're
and
going
maybe
to
you,
support
at
on.
a staff level, you guys discuss it, and again, this is something that's probably a little bit out of our domain, really more of a board mayor and alderman domain, but, you know, maybe there's something that could be an amendment in the the CIP program, and maybe we go ahead and try to fast track that intersection to upgrade the signal arms there. Just because, I mean, we'd have the opportunity to at least get 25% of it right now and have a private entity help subsidize the cost of it.
Okay.
Yeah, that's all I have.
I have to say something.
Mayor Williams?
Okay, to Noah's question there, I think with us, in order to get an all-black arms, you have to order those things well in advance. And I'm not sure what your timeline is, but there may be some issues there.
Yeah, I know he's trying to get started as soon as possible because he's also trying to get the commercial site development, I don't think this month, but next month submitted. So he's trying to get moving with the project. I know it's been mass graded for a while, but he's trying to get it to the finish point now.
Well, it's not for this committee to address, but Mark, you'll probably need to get with Darrell on that so that
Okay.
it will need to go to the board. That's all I've got.
I'll have Daryl look into it and see if that's a
And see, it may not even be feasible. I mean, I don't know, you know, what the lead time is, but I'm just trying to save the town a few dollars, you know?
Dylan, is that something you'll take back and just throw that out there for
Absolutely.
consideration?
Yeah, I'll talk to the
Appreciate it.
developer.
Thank you. You know, you may receive that question again going down the road. Commissioner Preston?
No questions.
No question. Commissioner Devlin? No. Okay. With discussion closed, we have a motion to approve the preliminary plat for West Mills Development with subject twos and also a subject to consider adding a sidewalk to the area where the mail kiosk will be located. All those in favor say yes?
Yes.
Yes? Noes? No noes. Let the record show that the preliminary plat with subject twos have been, for West Mills Development, are approved unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Dylan.
No, just go ahead and do the 5 and then I'll go.
Okay. Agenda item number 5 is discussion on amendments to the Farragut Code of Ordinances, Appendix A, zoning, Chapter 4, Section 6, customary home occupations, Town of Farragut applicant.
Hey, Bart, things dropping.
Doesn't seem to want to stay.
Hello, Bart.
Okay, maybe it'll stay now. So, I'm Bart Hose. I'm the Assistant Community Development Director. I'm here to talk about customary home occupations and some potential changes that we might be making to the current regulations that the town has had in place for a long time on those. Staff initiated this discussion with the Planning Commission back in October. You know, we were having some issues with
both permitting on our end, given the language in our existing ordinance, and also some citizen complaints about home occupations that were going on in some neighborhoods in town. So, and we thought that it would be a good time to kind of revisit the issue and see whether or not there were any changes that needed to be made. The Planning Commission discussed it at their October 17th meeting and felt that it was a pretty large issue that, you know, needed some additional work, and also asked us to put together like a working group of citizens to, you know, provide some input on it and help us with some of the potential amendments. We've been working on that since we put together a 5-member working group that's been involved and working on the project as well. They've met twice. We also looked at some regulations from other jurisdictions and kind of looked at their approach and some of the mix of uses they allow and how they were going about it. We found a pretty wide range of approaches that, you know, different communities took, and you know, from very simple regulations to really pretty complex ones. And you know, so we looked at those to try to get a sense of what might work in Farragut, and in terms of both approach, our ability to enforce, our staffing levels, and then you know, just something that would be kind of familiar enough that people would be comfortable with. At this point, we felt, though, that it would be good to come back to the Planning Commission, kind of update you on where we are on the project, where the working group is on the project, and get some input back. And then the plan would be, once we get some input from the Planning Commission, to go back with the working group and see if we're on the right track, and if things need to be, you know, modified or changed. Really, you know, the principal issue in dealing with zoning and home occupations is, you know, mitigating and balancing the potential impacts of the home occupation on the residential character of the neighborhood. So, you know, and at what point do the activities really, and their impacts associated with it, go beyond what would be reasonably expected and accepted in a residential neighborhood by the, you know, the other residents of that neighborhood. So some of the, in my write-up there, you know, some of the complaints that we've gotten in the past were listed. Those were listed from the October meeting. Also, you have a copy of the draft that we've been working on. It's a lot more, it's certainly longer. It's a little more complex than our existing regulations, but that in part was because the working group felt strongly that they wanted to try to do a carve-out for really low-impact home occupations that were predominantly office-based, to where they could just be used by right, and they wouldn't even need a formal permit. So if somebody's really just, you know, got an office and almost all their activity is just office-based, they have very few people ever come in and go in, very few package deliveries, that sort of thing. You know, that's not a lot of impact on the community, and it would, you know, probably be reasonable to let them operate as a by-use or a by-right use, and not have to go through a more elaborate permitting process. At the same time, the group also felt like they at least wanted to look at really broadening the range of potential uses that could be home occupations. But then that kind of created some of the additional complexity, because for every additional use that might be allowed, there's additional impacts we need to think about, and then how to mitigate those impacts. So some of the questions that we wanted to get input from the Planning Commission on are listed there in my write-up. And so generally, is the approach we're taking seem reasonable, particularly the use by right aspect of it. Sort of the general requirements that's in one section that would apply to every home occupation, do they seem reasonable? The business types that we've included in the type 1 and type 2. Type 1 would be the ones that are by right. Type 2 and some of the other categories that we developed were potentially have some more impact. Another thing that the committee or the working group was looking at was, if you're going to allow for a particular type of business to operate, then, you know, you have to at least have some reasonable parameters that they can operate. list that they're an operational use or a use that could be permitted, but then not, really be reasonable in terms of what you're asking them to do. A big issue we had is, or we have and still need to tackle is the types and size of vehicles allowed. So, and this, this both is a large impact. We try to regulate signs and have traditionally limited signs to, like 2 square feet for a home occupation. Obviously, a large vehicle that's got commercial graphics all over it is quite a bit larger than that. And these vehicles do get very large. And one of the things that the working group's been talking about is, are they too large for a residential area? Parked in a driveway or parked alongside the house. There are issues with driveways. We typically don't have, much in the way of setbacks for driveways. They can be, oftentimes 5 feet from the property line. So you could have a fairly large vehicle that's, got quite a bit of commercial graphics on it, parked right up next to a property line and thereby fairly close to somebody else's house. There's some noise issues to that too. So the type, size, number of business-related vehicles are an issue we'd like to get some input on before we go too far down that road. And then if there need to be restrictions on where those type of vehicles would have to be placed on the lot. But, thinking though that there are a lot of fairly small lots in Farragut and situations where they may not necessarily be able to, get a driveway into the backyard or even a large enough spot on the side of the house to park one of these if you wanted them back behind the front plane of the primary structure. So that's an issue we'd like to get some input on. The use of accessory buildings, whether to allow their use at all, to allow it just for storage, or to allow full activities in accessory buildings. And those are, like a detached garage or a detached storage building. We do allow those to be fairly large, 600 square feet, and 5 foot from a property line. So again, that could put activity fairly close to someone's backyard pool, something like that if it was on a neighbor's property. And then the way we're treating noise, vibration, odor, which is basically, absent having ways to measure that, we don't, is to just use basically a standard of if it's detectable by the normal senses off the lot. And that would limit a lot of potential home occupations if they're making noise that are potentially detectable on the adjoining lot, with normal senses. So I'd like to open it up if you have any questions on what we've been doing. If you have any input on these issues, I'd like to get it. And like I said, I'd like to collect the input and then go back to the working group and kind of hash some of this stuff out some more. One of your members is on the working group. So.
Okay. Thank you, Bart. Hey, Mark, do we have anybody signed up for this agenda item?
No, sir.
Well, since we do have a commissioner that is on the Customary Home Occupations Committee, I'll ask if they have anything they'd like to add to Mark's presentation or any comments or,
No, I mean, I think Bart covered
feedback.
it.
Okay. So you told them what to say.
Okay.
I mean, I think both meetings have been really good meetings, and there are some things that make sense to get further input on.
Sure. And how many people are comprised on the committee?
It's 5.
You have five members. Okay, and at large and
Yeah, at
town
our
staff.
large, all citizens, no elected officials, and just people that we reached out to the West Knox Chamber, and they gave us a suggestion of a couple names. We got some other suggestions from the community of people that might be good to serve on that committee. So, or working group. It's more a working group than a committee, but again, before we had any more meetings with that group to sort of get a sense of whether or not we're on the right track. I think the vehicle issue is a big one as to whether or not vehicles of that size are appropriate in a residential context. That, if you move, like that FedEx truck, you know, we were fortunate while we were moving into town hall the past couple of days and getting things set up, there was a FedEx truck there making the delivery, so I actually, you know, I put a tape measure on it, and it was about that class truck, and it's about 27 feet bumper to bumper. And you can see there's a guy standing next to it in that picture. I tried to get pictures that would provide some scale, you know, with either somebody there next to the truck or something reasonable in the background. So those are big vehicles. I use the FedEx and the UPS because people probably see those in their neighborhoods and have a sense for how big those are. Food trucks are one of the things that brought this discussion up initially, and you know, whether or not those are going to be permitted as home occupations. And I mean, certainly running the office for the food truck is fine. It's whether or not you have a large food truck parked on the residential lot or not, or whether they need to store it off-site. So the bottom three pictures are food trucks that are typically painted up. And I stole some, I Googled it, and found some images to put in there just to give you a sense of what they could look like. The other issue are slightly smaller vehicles, but they can get quite large too if you go back to that other one. And those are cargo vans and utility vans. Sometimes they're called like Sprinter vans. They come in various lengths. Some of them have extensions in the roof that make them higher. They can get really large too. I mean, you know, you can see the two pictures on the bottom right there have people in them, and you can see the scale of the person next to the vehicle. Again, it's a pretty large vehicle. So, you know, that is driving or some of the language we have in the ordinance, or you know, the potential regulations. And you know, if the planning commission doesn't feel like, you know, those are reasonable uses, then you know, that's something we can potentially strip out, and then, or at least talk to the working group about stripping out and you know, simplifying some things, because you know, that
we don't have any current ordinance right now other than just the location not being able to exceed the plane of the front of the property into the driveway on what.
Well, and on residential properties now, for things like boats and RVs, they have to be parked behind the front plane, you know. But then again, a boat or an RV is a you know, something that a person moving into a residential neighborhood might reasonably expect their neighbors to have an RV or a boat. Whereas, you know, having large commercial vehicles, you know, not everyone moves into a residential area expecting to have that in their neighborhood. So,
well, and to be fair, some HOAs restrict that already.
Exactly.
So that, you know,
yeah.
Part of our discussion on the working group is this not an HOA issue instead of a town issue? You know, a leisure vehicle that's gigantic isn't offensive, but somebody who's parking their work truck there is. So I think we got to be really careful about that.
And we do have, you know, a fair number of older subdivisions that don't have HOAs, and other subdivisions whose HOAs aren't particularly strong, or don't have, you know, particularly strong requirements in place. So, you know, you still have some residents moving in that, and particularly since COVID, that, you know, wanting to work from home has expanded. You know, so you have some residents that move in, and they'd like to be able to operate their business out of their house. And then you have other residents move in, and they're expecting a more traditional residential character in their neighborhood. And so, you know, how do we balance that? For a lot of the uses, and really a good number, or I'd say the vast majority of home occupation applications we get, they are fairly simple. They're things that we could either, you know, allow as a use by right, or even if they do require a permit, pretty low impact uses. Most of them are built around, I had a resident apply for one a few weeks ago. She was going to bake and then sell it at you know, farmers markets, things like that. Then she also wanted to potentially give lessons for baking in her house. You know, small scale, it's not that big a deal. We have have others that are, oftentimes really just somebody running an office. All their activity is going to be, kind of computer-based. They're doing online sales. They're, it's a more traditional sort of home occupation activity. But what we've seen is, more and more people want to expand their home occupation activity. So things like in those Sprinter vans will be like dog grooming or other types of mobile things. And there's even, I guess, some debate that y'all could have is, whether mobile businesses, whether it be food trucks or a dog grooming or something like that, is that even a home occupation? Is, the office certainly is a home occupation, but is the truck a home occupation? And it really depends. The community can write their regulations to allow it, and they can write their regulations not to. So, we wanted to get some input on that. The accessories building issue is like I said, it's right now we don't allow any activity outside of the primary residence, and that's to keep things small scale. You're probably not going to make a lot of noise or a lot of mess or fumes and stuff in your own house, whereas you might in a detached garage that's way in the back of your property. So how much activity to allow in an accessory structure, whether they'll they allow the actual activity or maybe storage for the activity. So
What kind of time frame are you trying to achieve to, present something to?
Well, we wanted to bring this to you, tonight to get some input, because we'd like to, make some more progress and get it wrapped up. Initially, there was some push because the town was also looking at its business licensing process, and but that's kind of been put on hold, and they're just staying with the existing system. Although they're advertising, that process more, so we are getting more applications for home occupation. And what that's doing is people are coming in and they're getting their business privilege license. And when they apply for it, it's in a residential neighborhood. So we're finding out that these businesses are in existence. And like I said, most of them are really small scale things, largely office-based activities. So they're not that problematic, but sometimes we get ones like food trucks or someone, wanting to run a construction company. We have had some odd things. A couple years ago, we permitted a woman that wanted to have a recording studio in her condo. The condo association was fine with it. The neighbors was. In order to do a home recording studio, you have to soundproof and vibration-proof the room anyway. So the impacts were not going to be that much of an issue on the neighbors. But the way our current ordinance is written, anything that's not a listed use has to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals, and that's a cumbersome process. So we're trying to get away from that to where it's clear as to what we could just go ahead and permit and not have to go through that extra step of having a Board of Zoning Appeals meeting and all of that.
I think you have some situations where you've got residents that don't necessarily live in a subdivision. They live along a road. We've got quite a few, McPhee and various other roads that are just got houses all along them. They're not really in a subdivision, nor do they have any sort of a HOA to contend with. So this has to be kind of looked at, I guess, across the board.
Like I said, I think one of the largest outstanding issues on this are the vehicles, and how, what type of vehicle and how big a vehicle to allow. We can't, it's probably not going to be reasonable to try to, regulate what the vehicles look like. So, really the way to deal with it is how many commercial vehicles, the size of the vehicles, the type of the vehicle. Is it a vehicle that's of a size and type that's customary in a residential area, like a regular car, a normal size van, a normal size pickup truck, or something larger? And, because that then is going to constrain the type of uses that are reasonably going to be able to operate.
I think you have other situations where you have guy that may work for a heat and air company, for instance, and that's his company vehicle, and he drives that home at night, parks it in his driveway. He may not be working out of his house, other than he lives there, and but.
And we don't have any prohibitions that I know of that, kind of prevent you from having a large truck like that. I think it's a matter of kind of propensity, is how often does that happen relative to people particularly wanting to have a home occupation. And, obviously if your home occupation is a food truck, you're going to have a food truck. It's just whether or not you're going to keep it on site or whether you're going to have to store it off site.
There's a lot to unpack here.
Yeah, there is. There is
When
more.
we started talking about, back in October, remember we talked about one of the food truck guys who had a generator, and he wanted, for whatever reason, it was important that his generator basically ran all the time, and maybe it wasn't compatible with his house power, I'm not sure, but there was, I can't remember what it was.
He was warming it up in the morning.
Yeah, he'd run his
that's
generator
what it
for 30 minutes in the morning,
Okay.
but otherwise he'd already modified his house to have it plugged in.
Yeah, he had plug-in, but
But something about the generator, and I know that was creating some heartburn. I mean, if I was on a small lot and had a neighbor right next to me and they cranked up their generator at 6 a.m., I wouldn't be too happy about that
Exactly.
either.
And
There's so much, no wonder the committee's struggling with this.
Well, I mean, I
We
think
just-
we've made really good progress.
yeah,
And
we
we've
have.
actually agreed on a lot of things. So let me just start with, how do you guys feel about the use by right? Basically, the idea is, if your neighbors don't know, why do you need a permit?
I think that's a good first step.
I mean, it saves the town the
just don't.
headache of having to go
Oh,
through
yeah.
all these permits. And guess what? If the neighbors know, they're going to be calling the town to complain, and then they move to tier 2.
Okay, I mean, I like where you're going with that. I think that's, also what I'm trying to figure out is, how do we reduce, we're never gonna eliminate, but how do we reduce the complaints coming into staff, and then staff trying to have to police it? And so,
Yeah.
I think that should be a primary objective, is I think if we reduce the overall number of complaints, then we have happier citizens and a happier staff.
And a lot of the complaints we get, when we do get complaints about them, are noise, traffic, like a lot of deliveries, things like that, or tend to be the drivers of that kind of complaint. Storage of materials on site.
But we've already made it through some of those.
That's right.
And all agreed on it.
And honestly, now, we don't allow storage event, anything outside that would be indicative of the home occupation being there.
It has to be either behind the fence or in the garage?
Right now, it's out,
on the place.
nothing outside.
Nothing outside, it's gotta
Nothing
be
outside.
in the garage.
Yeah.
So a
Right
big
now-
part of this too is what's enforceable.
That's what I'm
Because-
asking about for the deliveries.
Well, we
My
did
dogs
limit
have a
that.
personal relationship with our UPS driver.
Sure, and.
And I don't have run a business, so
So
that's,
basically for tier 2, and I think it's in there, the amount or the number that we agreed on, it's a guideline.
okay.
And for some neighbors, they're not going to care. For other people, they get personal deliveries. I mean,
But then
people
let's-
can say it's
It
our
would be
personal
complaint
delivery.
driven, and there we'd have the regulations in place if they could prove that
Right.
they were over that threshold.
But we've
So-
addressed it.
But it's
Or-
in the
Or that it's-
provisions.
But it's business related. How do you know if it's business related or personal related?
I mean, if someone
that's-
is driven enough, I'm sure they can find out.
Okay.
What
So
about
we're gonna leave
the,
it to the resident to figure that
I
out.
think for purposes of just getting through this and without overwhelming you, if we could get some pretty good guidance on the vehicle question,
Yeah.
that would be super helpful.
Well, and the.
You may not
if
be in
anyone's
agreement,
not
but-
Like, if
No, I
everyone,
think the use
is anyone
by right is-
opposed to the use by
I
right
think
for
the
the
use by
tier
right
1?
is good.
And
I support the use by right, and I think 26 feet is a good number.
26, okay.
You said that you've done some analysis and trying to
Well,
figure out,
like that FedEx truck there is probably about 27 feet long.
or maybe it's 27 feet, but I mean, it's
But,
just,
go out and stand in the street next to one, it's a big vehicle. And,
Yeah.
if it's allowed, we will get complaints about it. Now, if it's allowed, it's simple for staff, we just say, well, that's allowed.
well, it's subjective. The problem is now, it's kind of subjective. You're dealing with these things on a case by case,
Well,
and
yeah, right now, we don't allow anything outside on the lot that would be indicative of the business. So, whether it be a dump truck or a food truck or a bunch of storage, like a bunch of obvious, like contractor supplies stored in the backyard, anything like that is a potential violation.
It's still happening.
Yeah,
Well,
But
a lot of times we find out about these, like someone's running a business from home, we don't know about it until a neighbor complains.
I do think something that I think the on-street parking with these commercial vehicles is something that we should regulate. I think it's in the right of way. We should have the right to do that, for overnight parking of these commercial vehicles. I mean, if you got a commercial vehicle, it should be on your property.
We do have, that is something we put in the language of.
That's in the existing ordinance?
No, but it's in the language that we have here.
I don't think the Planning Commission really understands Tier 1, Tier 2, and what decimal reading the sound's going to have to be. And
on the Tier 1, those uses are pretty much, it's an office in somebody's house,
you don't know.
and that's it.
If it's out of sight,
The
out of
neighbors
mind,
don't know.
Then it's great. If
It's
you're
an
not getting
office in
complaints
somebody's
about it, then
house,
it's
they're
not a
not,
problem.
they're only getting a couple packages a day, maybe occasionally they have a client stop in, but very, very low impact, very low impact.
So for example, right now, the way it's currently written, if somebody is a CPA at their house and no client ever comes to their house, they're required to get a permit through the town. And so we're kind of moving forward to eliminate that step. It's less work for the town. It's no impact to the neighbors. It doesn't matter. Because they could always say, no, I'm not.
it
just
generates
seems-
no sales tax.
It just seems kind of,
And those are your Tier 1.
Yeah.
That's all your Tier 1 uses.
Yeah.
And that
Right.
frankly is a vast majority of the home occupations,
so that's
especially
just an example. It
post-COVID.
could also be an architect. It could be an attorney. It could be someone who does real estate work from their home.
Yeah.
It's no impact to the neighbors.
I have some comments here.
Okay.
Go ahead, John.
First of all, I think I'd like to applaud your effort. The group's done a good job. Looks like you've gone to different procedures and you've made a comprehensive list and a procedure. My issue is the complexity of the procedure, which leads to two things. One, people that are trying to comply with it, and the other is the town trying to enforce it. Okay? To the neighbor in the neighborhood, he doesn't really care if you're a type 1 or a type 2 or whatever. You just care about the intrusion into the neighborhood. So it would seem to me that the existing procedure that I think you have here has section A, B, and C talking about different occupations, and you could augment that with your current information. And then type D, just to talk about the restrictions, the number of visits, the type of vehicles, the number of deliveries, sales, other. Because right now you've got 4 visits sections. So when somebody tries to figure out in the neighborhood, can he have 6 visits? Well, I don't know, what type is he?
Well,
That gets really complicated. It seems to me more easier to enforce and easier to understand if you just had a list of restrictions. And you want to categorize those, that'd be fine. That would be my guidance in how to collate and organize the information that you've got. I think you've got really good information here, but I think you've got, like I said, you've got 4 sections on visits and 3 sections on vehicles and a couple of sections on deliveries, and that starts to get pretty complicated.
And that grew out of, we were trying to, have the like type 2 would be.
But
ones
the
with some of
neighbor doesn't care.
Yeah, I know.
And that's who you're trying to protect.
Yeah, I
Right?
agree.
And he doesn't care if it's a type 2, 3, 1, A, he doesn't really care.
Right.
He just wants to know. So those are my comments. Please take a look at that.
Yeah, no,
And I'm not a party to all the effort that you guys put into it, so there may be some basis for the way you've organized it. But to me, it's come out to be comprehensive, but very cumbersome to enforce and to follow, okay?
So maybe
That's my comment.
try to collapse some of the groupings.
That's what I would do. I would just make a section D, and then I would pick your worst cases. If you want no more than 6 visits a day, whether it's a type 1 or type 2 or whatever it is, then have that the limit, 6 visits a day. And if you want only this size vehicles, then that's the limit. And if you want so many deliveries per day, then that's the limit. And then it makes it pretty clear no matter what your business is.
But you still think everybody should have to have a permit?
I didn't hear it. He was coughing over it.
But you still think everyone should have to have a permit?
Except for use by right. You okay with use by right?
See, that's the reason for the,
Yeah, no,
the only reason for
think you
tier
can cover
one.
that in the first section. The part I have a problem with is the restrictions on the activities. Okay, so if you want to have one with a permit and one without, that's fine. But they all have to meet these restrictions on the activities, the number of visits, the number of
Well,
whatever.
of course.
So that's, you know, if you guys want permitting for one type and not for the other, that's fine. But to have requirements that the neighbors are trying to figure out which this guy's trying, this guy that lives down there and he's got this kind of business and he can do 2 visits. This guy's got this kind of business and he can have 6 visits.
Well, I don't think it'd be like that. I think they'd call the town, and I think they'd say, this person's running a business out of their home. They're not gonna look, they likely won't look up.
But then you have to do that. The town has to do that to figure out how many visits is okay. Why not just limit the number of visits? Just have thresholds that you feel aren't going to impact the residential character of the
I
neighborhood.
think they've got that language in there to have
It's in there.
maximum visits.
Yeah, but you got 4 different sections of maximum visits.
So, and it's.
That's my point.
It's a little bit
And that makes it,
Yeah, what it was is that, you know, the group felt that, you know, there were some uses that could be constrained and not allow them to grow too large, but then there were some things that might need additional visits just to be practical, like someone that might be cutting hair in their house, you know, and has another person. So I think that's what they were doing. But I understand what you're saying, like pick a
I've not
worst
been a
case and
party to
just let
that.
them
I'm
all
just
go in.
offering this as a way
Yeah.
to clarify and simplify your procedure. You can take it or you can leave it. You know, I'm not going to vote no on this procedure if you don't incorporate my comments.
Yeah, no,
I'm just
understand.
offering this as advice.
I have a couple comments.
Thanks, John. Commissioner Pinchuk, it's all yours.
Since October, I've talked to several people concerning this issue, and basically there's three items that I want to address. And you've covered one of them here under general requirements. A2, physical location, address of home occupation shall not be used as a meeting or staging location for off-site employees. A couple of people have told me that their businesses where maybe once a week, once a month, the employees meet at their house and they go over plans for the week or whatever. And those cars are parked in the street, creating an issue in subdivisions. So as long as the business owner is going to have those meetings, those cars need to be parked in their driveway or somewhere, you know, where they're not an issue with traveling up and down the subdivision streets. You're covering that. I'd like to see that stay in and enforced. The other issue was with accessory buildings. People have told me they don't want to see accessory buildings for private businesses. So again, you've got that, I think, pretty much covered. And the third thing has been about vehicles, as we've all been talking about. And the issue, I think, there is what I've been told by some of our citizens, they don't want them visible. So if they want to put it behind a fence, I know currently it's the front.
It's the front plane for RVs and recreational equipment that, like
So
Bart
if it
said,
stays
it's
there-
not allowed at all right now, currently.
See,
Okay.
the thing is that,
Yeah.
you know, that's not going to be as visible from the street, but it's going to be very visible from the adjoining neighbor, because it's going to be essentially 5 foot from their property line.
Well,
So-
How we handle this issue, I don't know, but what I've been told by some of our citizens is could they get it further back or behind a fence of some kind? So,
I mean, we've talked about having the same restriction on
I
those
can't
types
hear
of
you. I'm
vehicles.
sorry.
We've talked about having the same restrictions on those types of vehicles as we do for boats, just to keep it consistent.
keep it what?
The
Keep it
boats.
consistent.
Do
Oh,
the
boats.
same restriction as for boats.
Well, those are the three issues that,
Or RVs, for example. Those are also super large vehicles that we allow behind the front plane.
Bart, do you think we're making progress on the items that you wanted to address tonight?
Yeah, like I said, I think the biggest one is the vehicles and as to whether or not that's reasonably going to fly. Because, you know, that's something that we've struggled with, that I've struggled with on trying to do some research as to how to set parameters on it, you know, if you know, because as soon as you start allowing large vehicles, then, then you have to start putting parameters on how large, how big and how to do that.
It's going to be hard to regulate.
Well, we already have a restriction on large vehicles. They just happen to be recreational vehicles and boats.
Well,
So,
we don't have a regulation on the size, just that they have to be behind the front plane.
understood.
So, as to what point, I think the number is reasonable. The way we have it now is essentially one. I had someone that called to do a home occupation a few weeks ago, and they wanted to know if they could have 3 very large Snap-on tool truck vehicles on their lot, and then have their employees come and pick them up in the morning and go out and do Snap-on tool runs. So,
Yeah.
no, under our current regulations, and that wouldn't be allowed on this one either. But,
Right.
we do get requests like that. So if you don't put some parameter on the size and the number and the type of vehicle, you'll get some crazy amounts of vehicles and sized vehicles on these lots. So,
So this FedEx is 28 feet, is that what you said?
I'm guessing
Roughly.
that's about 27. The one that was at Town Hall that John and I measured was 27 foot bumper to bumper, and it had about that much hangover on the back end. So,
I'm okay with the 27.
Yeah.
27? Okay.
Yeah, sure. Real quick. So input on the issues you're looking for. No noise, no outdoor storage. Allow this type of vehicle as long as it's behind the front plane, just like RVs.
We have still touched on the accessory buildings.
yeah, well, somebody brought. a couple
I did.
people brought
I
that
mentioned
up.
that.
So I like Jeff's no noise. If the neighbor can't hear the noise,
So you're saying it's okay to,
if it's not obnoxious,
if
if the
you
neighbor's
wanna
not
do
complaining.
taxidermy in your detached garage, that's okay. And that's probably about as quiet as it's gonna get.
Well, I'm saying also not on that, me personally. No detached, no
No
storage, no
detached, okay.
adjacent buildings.
I'm not
Now,
against
again,
it. No
back to
detail.
this original point, if nobody's complaining or can see it, or anybody knows it's there, then
I kind of agree with that. I think if we open up the accessory buildings, I think that could possibly be a slippery slope.
It is. I agree.
But I'm kind of like Jeff, if somebody does something back there and nobody's complaining about it, then who cares?
No, it's not violating the intent of the ordinance if nobody knows about it, so.
Right. And that's the intent. The intent is to protect residential areas.
So 27 feet on the length, and it has to be behind the front plane of the house, just like an RV.
my counsel would be to do a little more research if you want to have tighter parameters. Like, there's a way to know exactly these food trucks, what the height, length, gross vehicle weights are, and put that in there, so nothing exceeds that, right?
Let's stick.
There's no way we can do,
These guys, I don't want them getting up on a ladder trying to have to measure, and that's ridiculous. But I think length is something that's pretty darn easy. They can go out in about 20 or 30 seconds without drawing a whole lot of attention, go out there and run a tape measure on it.
Yeah, I was looking into that, and I found that, different models of the same class truck all have slightly different lengths, so like one brand of a 16-foot box. So, they typically measure them in the storage area of the truck. So like a 16-foot length, you would think, well, how long could that be? They're 26, 27 foot long when they're, when you're looking at bumper to bumper. So
You've become quite an expert on this.
unfortunately,
He's going to kill me for delegating that to him.
Okay, so I will continue along these paths. I'll be sending out an email to set up another work group. And does anyone else has any other comments or?
I don't have any, Bart. Thank you.
Thank you for your efforts. A lot of work went into this.
Thank you, Bart.
Okay. All good, ready to move on? Moving on to Agenda item number 6, and that is discussion on an amendment to the major road plan to provide street cross-sections for certain collector and minor arterial streets. Town of Farragut applicant.
And this item is just for discussion purposes only. We're not taking action on it. These recommended cross-sections are mostly some of the town's collector streets and one section of North Campbell Station Road north of the overlook to the town limits. We selected these street sections because they're either very substandard, like Allen Kirby Road, or they're incomplete. They don't provide for all users of the transportation system. They're just vehicle-oriented. They're also, other than Boyd Station Road, which will be coming to you all next month for a preliminary plat for improvements to that road, none of these roads are part of any ongoing project or any planned project by the town or a developer. So there's nothing we're planning to do with these. These are frankly going to be guides, and they'll be linked with the major road plan so that they could serve as, again, a guide to a developer or the town for a potential future project. In most cases, they're going to be development driven. The town is certainly not going to spend money on going out and widening any of these roads. They're going to be driven by some type of development. There are some concepts that we're trying to promote with these cross sections that frankly benefit the people that front on these roads, and I want to explain that. One thing we're doing is with these is providing for what's called complete streets. That's streets that serve all users, not just motorists, but also pedestrians, bicyclists, all users of the transportation system. Another concept that we're looking at is making these things functional. So the street cross sections that have a non-vehicular element to them, in most cases it's a shared use path. Those are wider and they're more multi-functional. They can be more easily used by people with baby strollers, bicycles, those kinds of things. So functionality is important. The biggest thing is looking at the context, because if you go right now, and I think the people that have signed up need to understand this, if you go by our regulations right now, and we improve these roads without these adopted cross sections as a change, it's going to be a lot more impact. For example, a major collector under our subdivision regulations is 2 12-foot lanes with curb and gutter. A minor collector is 2 13-foot lanes with extruded curb. And a minor arterial is 12-foot lanes with curb and gutter. So one thing we're trying to do is take the context into consideration and not over-engineer these streets if they're ever improved. There's some streets that we'll go over, we're not changing the width at all. And that's kind of a little revolutionary in a way, because it's not what normally you would do in engineering. But we're trying to retain as much as we can the rural character of these roads, because when I first started working for Farragut, and I drove Boring Road and Allen Kirby Road, I mean, it reminded me of being back in Greene County. It's just, I loved it, and I don't really want that to change. But there are some improvements that, you know, do need to be made to these roads at some point, because some of them are so narrow that they're unsafe, frankly. And they do need to provide for other users of the system, at least from the staff's perspective. So those are some of the concepts that we're trying to promote with these cross sections. It also kind of lowers cost for both the developer or the town if we do improve these roads, because we're not having to over-engineer them, you know, and widen them more than they need to be. You know, we're trying to, again, think about the context. So I do have some people that signed up. If you want, I can have the ones that signed up for each street cross section to speak when I finish with that section, because I have them organized.
Yeah, let's go through it that way, Mark.
So again, this is just discussion purposes only. Allen Kirby Road, and this is, if you're on Allen Kirby Road, hopefully you're not standing there too long, but if you're facing east, from Loudoun County, looking back toward the town. The current lane width is about 14 feet, and it has open ditch drainage, okay? So what is in the proposed cross sections is two 11-foot lanes with a separated path on the north side of Allen Kirby Road. There would be no sidewalk or trail on the south side. And in fact, probably all the improvement would go to the north. The reason that this cross-section is in here, this is the cross-section that Bridgemore is required to build when they finish up the Bridgemore subdivision and they have access to Allen Kirby Road. They have to put this cross-section in. Now, whether we need two 11-foot lanes beyond Bridgemore, I think is a reasonable question. And I'm certainly open to potentially a lower lane width. But again, we do want it to be safe. But that's the reason for this particular cross-section on Allen Kirby Road. And Chairman, if you want, I can have the person that signed up for Allen Kirby Road to speak to this. If you,
Yeah, let's do that.
that is Scott Forrester.
Thank you. I live on Allen Kirby.
Scott, you may have to try to adjust that.
Built my house there in 2018.
Like,
Sorry.
I don't know if that thing is going to stay. It's been
Can you hear me?
dropping down all night.
Yeah. So, got the information.
I'm sorry,
and-
can you say your name? I apologize.
Yeah, no worries. It's Scott, S-C-O-T-T.
Uh-huh.
And my last name is Forrester, F-O-R-E-S-T-E-R.
Thank you. And you live on Allen Kirby?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I do. 12826. I'm like the third house on the left. So my biggest question was, in looking at the plans, which side you were proposing the bicycle lane. I don't disagree that the road probably could stand to be widened some, as long as it's not in my yard. Just kidding, just kidding. But we have made a significant investment in landscaping there, so I was a little concerned when I learned about this, so I appreciate the opportunity to learn more about what the plans are. So the bicycle lane you're being proposed will be on the north side, on the
Yes, sir.
Bridgemore side.
Because there's already one there that Bridgemore has built.
Yeah, there's a
through,
greenway. Yeah, I
just-
walk it every day.
Yeah,
My
it
dogs
would
love it
extend
there,
on
so-
down, and eventually, when it gets to Loudoun County, it would just drop down into
Very-
the
very
road
familiar with
because they're
that.
probably not going to
Yeah,
extend
and
it.
so, you know, when you cross over into Loudoun County, there's a safety factor there, where that curve, I'm sure you've been on the road, there's a blind curve there. Would Loudoun County be reciprocating to any improvement on their side? I guess that hasn't been considered, but.
Yeah, I mean, that would
but
be,
it's- Yeah, that's Loudoun County, but anyway. Okay, well, my biggest concern was, one was, what's the time frame? So there's nothing, indefinite, so that's good. And then the other thing, just, which side of the road we're looking at on the bicycle. There are a significant amount of bicyclers on that road pretty much every day, especially this time of year. I'm one of them, so.
Yeah. Me too.
Anyway, I'm just here really trying to gain information and be in the know as this progresses, so I appreciate the opportunity.
That gives you enough
Okay.
information,
Thank you.
Scott?
Thank you.
That give you enough information from Mark's presentation.
Yeah.
and that's the only speaker for Allen Kirby Road, so
Okay.
I'm going to
Can-
go back.
Thank you very much.
Can I follow up just a little
Sure.
bit? Mr. Forrester, there's about 54 feet width of right-of-way, from what I can tell from KGIS. In the Kirby, the Allen Kirby is not just, our right-of-way is not just Allen Kirby. We have some right-of-way on either side of that.
Right.
The town does. So,
So what is the right-of-way from the center mark of the road? that
The
town-
required right-of-way is 30 feet from the center line, and that's what it is across most of Bridgemore's frontage.
the Bridgemore has dedicated right-of-way. Yours is
Right,
a
and then you also, on the north side of Allen Kirby, you also have the pipeline to consider.
Yeah.
And it's within 30 feet, probably, give or take. So-
Probably not, but yeah, I mean, we would have to obviously work with them on that,
Yeah,
but
obviously the pipeline. you're-
honestly, in the short term, the only likely improvements to Allen Kirby is when Bridgemore
Yeah.
does their phase, because the rest of it would only be if somebody develops like Tim's land out
So the
there.
beginning of Allen Kirby would not necessarily change. It's-
No, because all that's going to be, most of that, if not all of it, is going to be on the north side, because that's where all the right-of-way's been dedicated. So there would be minimal impact on the south side and no sidewalk or trail.
Based on this, you're going to 22 feet total for the road. It's currently 14 feet.
Yep.
And,
Again, that's what the Bridgemore cross-section is. That's all the reason for that.
okay, gotcha. So this wouldn't be applicable to the end where I live on, which is very close to McPhee Road, right?
Well, no, that's where it is. That's
Yeah,
Bridgemore.
that's-
This backs up to Bridgemore. You're right across the street from some of that.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Okay, so-
the trail, is the trail already in there?
Yeah, the trail is
There's a
already,
greenway.
So the
Yeah.
only
There's a
thing that would
greenway there
happen
now.
is a road widening in that
yeah,
area.
and it would be to the north.
Most of the
So Mark, what could I expect to the south in my front yard there? I've got a lot of really old mature oak trees and,
Honestly, like I said, me personally, I'm a tree hugger. I don't
Yeah.
want to take the trees out, so
you and me, baby, that's why my last name's
I-
Forrester.
I think the plans that Bridgemore had approved with their concept plan had all of the work being done there was nothing below the south edge of pavement.
Okay. So we would have little to no impact.
You would have little impact through that section, that's right.
Dude, that's great news for me. Thank you guys very
Okay,
much.
thanks, Scott.
And let me just point out with Allen Kirby Road, if you went by our standards right now, if you had to improve that, not only would you have, let me see, you'd have 12-foot lanes, you'd have curb and gutter, which is not part of your lane width typically. So that's another 4 feet.
Well, according to our bike.
Well, that's,
The
yeah.
complete street, you'd have,
And then you'd have a sidewalk or a walking trail on both sides of
Yeah.
the road. So again, we're looking at the context, trying to retain the rural character as much as we can with these cross sections that are kind of variances from what's in our subdivision regulations, frankly.
is the ultimate intent to maybe do because we really have cracked down, we've really gotten a handle on a lot of our substandard roads, and they're
Yes.
dwindling. Is the intent to, because I looked at the list, and we really only have Fleener, Hobbs, Dixon, and the other part of Union Road, to have one for each one of those, and then get rid of these.
Yeah, that's, I think, the idea.
And the
Yeah,
other
is
question
to-
I had for you is, will we be including design speed? Because that does have an impact on how
I mean,
much-
we'll probably look at all that, yeah. I need to get guidance from the community and from the commission and the board, because if you amend the major road plan, that has to go to the board, the mayor and alderman too.
Okay.
I'm just trying to
Yeah.
give you some context of what we're trying to do here, because I empathize with the property owners that front on these collector streets. They're not internal to a subdivision, so we're just trying to, lessen the impact with these cross sections and not kind of over-engineer them, the streets, when you make improvements.
Mark, can I give because a lot of people on the planning commission may not understand where this comes from.
Sure.
Where the roots of this. The roots of this idea of taking each road and looking at it individually comes from our experience with Union Road. In 2016, 2017, the town received an 80-20 split with TDOT on, which means they're paying 80%, the state block grant is paying 80%, we're paying 20%. But the thought was, because TDOT was paying for it, we would have to follow their standards. Their old standards used to be 12-foot travel lanes, 40 mile per hour design speed, 2 4-foot bike lines, 2 30-inch curb and gutter, 2 5-foot sidewalks, and that's what our standards were. And that's what was originally introduced. And the community was overwhelmed with that. That was, with all of the things that went into that, would be 59 feet from sidewalk, edge of sidewalk to edge of sidewalk, and realized that that was overkill. At the time, the TDOT had just adopted the multimodal access policy, which took into consideration, if we're going to put in a trail, making the lanes a little narrower, is it possible to reduce the design speed? And we fought I fought and Vice Mayor Meyer fought to get into the design exception. And when we realized we did get our design exception went from 40 mile per hour design speed to 30 mile per hour design speed, was a significant, people don't really think that's a speed limit. It's a significant difference on the impact of that corridor. And we have a lot of houses on Union Road that were going to be really negatively impacted with the 40 mile per hour design speed. Getting that knocked down to 30 miles per hour made a significant difference on the impact to the homeowners on Union Road. The 11-foot lanes, we went from the 2 4-foot bike lanes and the 2 5-foot sidewalks and the 6 feet on both sides to one multi-directional shared use path, one 10-foot and a 6-foot, and it fits that, it makes sense in that particular corridor. We went from 59 feet to 37 feet, plus a reduction in the design speed, which made a huge difference for the residents who live directly on that corridor and are going to be impacted because that road is really substandard. So that's where this was inspired from, looking at our standards right now in our subdivision regulations. It's one size fits all. We've seen the McPhee, Old Stage, and Everett Road were all built with 12-foot lanes, 40 mile per hour design speed, and they are racetracks because we didn't take a look at each one of them and really consider what's the context here, what's going on here, what makes sense for this stretch of road in our community. So this was a long effort by you to take a look at each one of these roads that are still substandard, not necessarily putting them in the CIP, although Evans Road got put in the CIP because of the school, the proposed school. They thought we were going to get a school down in McPhee, and now we don't have that. Evans Road has been pushed out. To me, doesn't necessarily need to be on our CIP because there's no urgency there anymore because we're not seeing a school going in down there. But that's for any of you that are fairly new to the, this is where the inspiration came from. One size does not fit all, and all of these different roads deserve to retain as much of their character while the road is made safe.
Thank you for the background, Louise.
And the value of adopting the cross sections as a major road plan is that becomes the regulation. It's not, you don't have to go to the subdivision regulations and say, oh, I've got to have 2 13-foot lanes, sidewalk on both sides of the road. Well, that's going to completely destroy the entire character of this road. So that it would supersede that. So any other questions on Allen Kirby Road? The second one is Boring Road, and this one, obviously there is a school that's going on Boring, and some of this might not be applicable now because there's some discussion about closing Boring Road before it comes into Kingston Pike. So that could affect, obviously, this particular cross section. But if you start at the east end of Ingalls, the old Ingalls, and you're looking north, the existing lane width out there it's 16 feet total width for Boring Road. That's obviously pretty substandard. And what we were looking at with this one, there's no Bridgemore to match, so we don't have the 11-foot lanes that we were trying to continue. Here it's 10-foot lanes, 2 10-foot lanes, retaining the open ditch drainage, no curb and gutter, and then we'll hopefully work with the school, because we already had a lot of discussion with them about this, is to have a really wide grass strip so that the trail is not really in your line of sight with the road and it doesn't look like a big sea of asphalt. And then having a more narrow road too also helps with that. So the 2 10-foot lanes, which on a road like Boring Road would be sufficient, but you got about 3,100 feet of unimproved road out there, and the existing right-of-way actually surprisingly is between 50 and 60 feet throughout most of Boring Road, so there's a pretty ample right-of-way there. So that's the first segment. The way that they've designed this, there's 3 different segments. The second segment is that you come to the curve where Boring Road and Boring Lane come together, and you're starting to look west towards Smith Road. The road is still 16 feet wide. We would continue, again, the two 10-foot lanes. Keep in mind, Boring Road, again, it's a major collector. Normally, you'd have two 12-foot lanes, curb and gutter, that's 4 more feet of hard surface. And then you have a sidewalk or walking trail on both sides of the road. So this is not what we're proposing here. So that section, again, 10 foot. And then you get to the where the county is going to be improving their part of their frontage for the bus traffic for the school. And that is going to be, what was approved was two 12-foot lanes. And because that's what was constructed from the county's property to Smith Road when Baldwin Park was developed, two 12-foot lanes and curb and gutter. What this cross-section recommends is two 11-foot lanes with curb and gutter. And then you got an existing walking trail on the north side as part of Country Way. You'd have a 5-foot sidewalk on the south side with a pretty wide landscape strip. That landscape strip on Boring Road is going to be probably more than 10 feet because of a water line conflict. So again, and the Planning Commission recommended to the county to go back and if it came up as a change order to consider two 11-foot instead of two 12-foot lanes. So that's the third segment of Boring Road. I do have one person that signed up for Boring Road. Does anybody have any questions or comments on this one?
I don't have any more.
Just to reiterate, this is really up in the air for the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. Is
Yeah,
talking about
that's true.
the options here.
Right.
So that's a conversation with the community about what they want to see.
Like I said, I do have one person, if you want, Chairman, me to have her come up.
Yes, please.
Christine DeMar. Okay, thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Could you give her name and address for us?
Oh, sure.
please? I'd
It's
appreciate
Christine DeMoro, 349 Bernie Circle. I live in Baldwin Park. My backyard is going to abut the new school, and I'm thrilled, because I think a very, very good way to use that piece of land, and knowing, I've been here 12 years, I know that we have to work with the community, and we have to, fulfill all needs, and I'm really thrilled that we have a new school, although my children are out of state, and obviously they're a lot older. I'm here to talk about Boring Road, and I'll talk about it, and I'm not sure what is happening. When this was all going on, it seemed as if there was Boring Road, I'll call it Boring Road South, okay, going the undeveloped or the
Substandard.
Substandard road.
Yeah, east and south, yeah,
Okay.
from
So
Smith.
that's east, I think
Well,
that's
you're on east, and then you're going to turn and go south.
Yeah.
south, the south portion. Well, I used to take that home all the time because I like to look at the horses. It was pleasant, it calmed me down. Former teacher, retired a number of years ago, but I sub, and I sub at Farragut Middle. Now, I'm sure you've all seen what it's like when people are leaving school with their children, especially elementary. It's dangerous. It is extremely dangerous. They want the kid in the car, they're going someplace. It is very dangerous. Today I was coming home from a subbing gig at West Valley, and I came up north on Boring Road. I drive a Prius, and I'm very proud of it. It's a low gas car, it's a narrow car, and I'm a slow driver. You don't want to be behind me because I follow whatever. If it's 35 miles an hour, I do 32. I haven't gotten a ticket, one ticket in, I don't know, almost 55 years of driving. One ticket for speeding. But what happens is, and I don't know if people do this or on this road, I'll go up to go to my house and see what were the horses. People are coming down at breakneck speed in big, what I consider a big car. My husband has a big car. I don't want one. You have to slow down and be very, 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 very careful, or you'll lose your mirror. And I guess I don't really understand why, since there is grass, I'm asking, I don't think you need sidewalks necessarily. There's a lot of grass on both sides. I don't know why somebody, either the town, Board of Ed, or somebody couldn't pay to widen that road, because right now there's a huge house being built. If you're going north on the Boring Road, substandard, there's a huge house being built. I'm sure there'll be at least 2 or 3 cars. Across from that, there is a huge portion of land, I think it's owned still.
Sorry, yeah. You can stop that. Well, you can, if the planning commission wants you to continue, go ahead.
There's a huge piece of land that is undeveloped, I'm sure, and it's owned by Mr. Horn. I'm sure that at least 3 houses, 4 houses will be put on there. And I guess I don't understand why that wouldn't be immediately, forgetting about the school, I know you have worked out something with the buses, why wouldn't that be considered substandard and fixed? And there's a ditch in it, when you go down, there's a ditch. Also, Woodside Green, they don't trim their trees, and so you have lots of dead branches that fall into the road, and they're there, nobody, I don't know who picks them up, but people are coming south on Boring. I fear for my life. I fear for my life. No, I don't fear for my life. I fear for my car, okay? And I just think something should be done. Because even with the bus rides that you plan for the school, you all know that parents and grandparents and caregivers will look for ways to circumvent.
Right.
And this might get them to Kroger faster, or to Publix, or
Right.
to Kohl's.
Mark, do you want to add some comment
Thank
on
you.
that? Thank you, Christine.
Yeah.
And I think you even mentioned before, there may be some discussion that could be closed.
Yeah, there's
that
options
section.
that the board's considering, ranging from a right-in, right-out at Kingston Pike to closing it down.
What do you do with all the people, though?
They can still go to Smith Road.
Smith Road.
You still- That's why Smith Road from your neighborhood to the west.
Yeah, it'd be closed
was
further
improved
down.
With the wide lanes, curb gutter, and sidewalk.
That's a community discussion that's got to come up. There's 3 different options they're looking at, and that
Yeah,
needs to be part of this community
It's
discussion.
it's not a done deal.
A speed bump might help, because somebody's gonna get hurt.
There's another process for that too, if it comes to that. I think it's just a matter of waiting to see what that public input is and the discussion, and then.
When is that?
They have not scheduled
Yeah.
that yet.
I don't think so. Yeah. Okay, well, thank you.
Stay tuned. And, your considerations for that are definitely.
Does any commissioners have any comments on Boring Road? Does that make,
I don't.
again, that could change, but we'll see
I
what
think it's so
happens.
up in the air right now,
Yeah.
because we don't have input from the board
Okay.
on and
Yeah,
the
right,
community
yeah.
about what they're going to do.
What Knox County does, how much money they're willing to spend is also probably part of that formula that Board Mayor and Alderman are going to take into account in all of this.
Yeah,
And the CIP.
yeah, okay.
Still some moving parts.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chris.
All right, the next road is Boyd Station Road. As I mentioned earlier, this road actually will be improved, and that will be coming to the Planning Commission next month, in association with the Grove at Boyd Station subdivision. And so, right now, Boyd Station Road, if you're on McPhee and you're looking east, you got 2 10-foot lanes, and obviously you have the railroad to the south. So the cross section there that is going to be coming to you all next month would be basically slightly widening the drive lanes to 11 feet it's actually going to be a curb and gutter, but it's not going to be tied to a storm sewer system because it's so flat through there. So actually the open ditch it was so flat that the designer couldn't make the open ditch drainage work properly. So it's just going to be a curb and gutter not tied to the storm sewer, and it'll sheet flow toward the railroad right-of-way. He can explain that to you next month, but this cross-section will change a little bit. Obviously, you only have a pedestrian facility on one side of the road. It'll be on the north side, and that will be mostly constructed with the Grove at Boyd Station subdivision. There'll be a couple of sections that the town will have to work with the property owners to add a section to McPhee, but mostly that will be associated with the Grove. Does anybody have any questions on this cross section? You'll get a lot more detail on it next month. I'm trying to see. I don't think I had anyone sign up for that one. Okay. And then Evans, I do have some people signed up for Evans. So if you look at Evans, and again, we're going to start at McPhee looking east on Evans. You've got roughly 2 9-foot lanes, open ditch drainage, and then what the cross section shows is 10-foot lanes, just slightly wider, make it a little safer, but retain the open ditch drainage. There's a trail at the cottages at Price Farms that stubs into the Price Farm itself to the east, and that would be extended on the south side of Evans Road, and it will cross at a crosswalk, probably one similar to what we have on Turkey Creek Road and Grigsby Chapel Road, to tie into the walking trail that was constructed with the farm at Willow Creek that stubs out to the west end of their development. So this first section shows the westernmost leg of Evans. There will be no new pedestrian facility on the north side of Evans, and really not much affected on the north side. Current right-of-way out there at Evans varies at 40 to 45 feet roughly. It's about 1,700 trips per day on the road, so it gets a fair amount of traffic. Second section is what I talked about earlier, is where you continue that modest improvement to the road width and then you cross to tie into the existing trail at the farm at Willow Creek. And then the third section, well, that's the only 2 sections, but the rest of the road was improved to Virtue as part of the farm at Willow Creek, and it's a much wider kind of road cross section than what these cross sections would propose. So normally, if you're going to go out and improve Evans Road, again, you'd be looking at 2 12-foot drive lanes, curb and gutter, and a sidewalk or walking trail on both sides of the road. So this is obviously very different from that. But I do have some people that have signed up for this. Chairman, do you want to hear their comments first?
Yeah, let's go to the comments first.
Just remember, you've got 3 minutes, so we kind of went a little over with the other one. The first speaker is Larry Doss.
Hey, Larry. Name and address, please.
Larry Doss, 12735 Evans Road. Actually, this doesn't affect me too much because it is on the south side of the road from me. It affects the Price Farm. Am I correct in saying that? Because
yes, sir.
Your
yes,
cut sections need to show east and west instead of east and east on that. The other thing I'll say real quick, you've got a minimum, if you can put Evans up there, you got a minimum 2 foot off the road, you got a drainage ditch, you got 6 foot minimum on the bed that you're doing, then you got 8 foot on your, anyway, totals up to 22 feet, not counting whatever the drainage ditch width is. On a 2 foot ditch, 3 to 1, that's another 12 foot. That's 6 foot on either side. So that's the 12 and the 16, that's 28 feet off the edge of the road. We want to keep it rural. So I would like to see like it's done on McPhee Road in front of my place. I'm at the corner. It's right 2 foot off. You got your walking path. It's well used. I can tell you it's very safe and there's no problem. So you can go to 10 foot. The crossover you mentioned, so I won't go into that. The other thing I have at my location at 12735, I have a sight vision that goes up the road, looking from my driveway to the left, going towards Virtue. Whenever I shot that in, when I built my house back 20 years ago or whatever, I do have the site vision necessary for the state. Made sure of that before we put the driveway in. But if you increase the road width to 10 foot, we already have a bad thing with speeding. I hope that when you go to 10 foot, you keep it down to a minimum. But right now, that's the dangerous part of us coming out, is off my driveway, looking to the left. I have to look to the left, look to the right, look to the left again. Okay? And it's the same way. So I was told back a long time ago that that road would be approved before they do anything to it, because that hill needs to come down.
Mr. Doss, just because are you your driveway come out on Evans Road or it comes out on McPhee?
Evans Road out of my driveway.
Okay, that's what you're talking about, where your line of sight is bad,
Yes,
where you
ma'am.
have to look both ways. Okay.
To the
And then
right-hand
back.
side towards McPhee, I have plenty. To the left-hand side, I've got about 325 feet, I believe, or 350, maybe it was.
Okay.
You're supposed to see a 6-inch buffer at 6 foot from your driveway, and that's what was required by the state at the time. I'm actually a surveyor and an engineer both, so.
I'm just trying to get my logistics because I was confused
Yes,
which one
ma'am.
you were talking about.
And
Thank you.
The other thing, and I'll mention this and then I'll be quiet, is turning left on the Virtue off of Evans. That's the most dangerous intersection for us. It really needs to be looked at whenever you take a left there. Very dangerous. But anyway, thank you so much.
They are looking at that with the second phase of Virtue.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
the
they
second
should
phase
be
of
looking at that.
Larry,
Yeah.
there's a blind hill right there.
Yeah.
That's pretty scary.
Well, I
Yeah.
get the same thing coming out of my driveway to the left.
Yeah, they should be looking at that
Yeah,
pretty
I'm sure that
carefully.
blind hill on Virtue is going to get shaved off.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I get it because people come down that road 45 and 50, and it just fascinates me because we're crossover. Evans doesn't go anywhere. It goes from Virtue over to McPhee. I have no idea why people would do that. They could go straight down to Kingston Pike, a lot easier than crossing over, but they do it. Like you say, you have counted 1,700 cars in
Yeah.
that area, which is fascinating to me.
Yep.
But thank you so much.
Thank you, Larry.
Thank you, Larry.
The second speaker is Greg Wiberly, sorry. Just remember 3 minutes on, I'm not going to put the clock up, but because I can't keep this image up at the same time.
Craig Wyberly, 12603 Evans Road. I had some opening remarks, but I first want to say I kind of resent Mark's comments that they weren't planning on doing anything to Evans Road because, as we all know, not too long ago, y'all tried to take my land on Evans Road for the Greenway, and that failed. And then in one meeting last year I went to, there's a fiscal budget for, I think, 2029 for Evans Road improvements. So to say that this isn't in the works, it's been in the works for years, it's continuing in the works, you've changed the rules on how roads and sidewalks are going to be designed, and now you're just moving forward inch by inch, trying to wear us down on that. Now that original plan, of course, wanted a 25-foot easement on our side of the road, which was ludicrous. Why would you need 25 feet? Was there some design criteria to that? No, the email from the town said, when the designers asked, how wide do you want this? The reply was, we like grass. That was the design. It's not what was needed, it's not the minimum. They wanted to take as much property as they could at the time, and it was 25 feet. And it was just ridiculous. And they put it on the side of the road where you have telephone poles, fire hydrants, underground gas, underground internet, overhead power, the whole works on that side. On this side of the road, you have a horse fence that's 50 years old, held together by twine and a prayer. So why the planning wasn't for that side of the road, I do not know. I have one guess, though. I know on that side of the road, you have several well-to-do people that are well-known donors, the local politicians. On my side of the road, we have middle class, one person's on Social Security. who do you think the town's gonna come after? Those people or the person on Social Security? Take the easy target, right?
There's 1 minute left, okay.
Okay? The other thing
I've got
is, even putting any sort of trail down an area that's been wholly agricultural for years, you have livestock arenas there. Why you would put a dog path next to a livestock arena is just ludicrous to me. Now, the last thing I'd like to say is, I've tried to discuss this before. I've come to prior meetings to raise these same issues. And then after I got nowhere with that, I contacted Drew Burnett. I said, come on out, let's have a nice, calm discussion. But after many numerous excuses of no-show, I gave up with him, and he certainly didn't follow up with me on it. So to think that I'm getting the attention of the town of Farragut to understand what's going on out there, when I'm sure hardly anybody's been out there to look at it, I just do not understand. So hopefully in the future, we can have a meaningful conversation on Evans Road to discuss it. But don't tell me it's not being planned. I resent that. Thank you.
And the last speaker is Jim Petroni. I won't put you on the clock, but I got you on my watch, my personal watch, because I can't pull this image up if you needed to reference it, if you're on the clock.
Jim Petroni, 12627 Evans Road. I'm a little confused too. I looked at, went online and looked at the town's budget, and as I saw it, there was money in projected in the budget for land acquisition to begin, land acquisition, right-of-way acquisition to begin in 2027. I may be mistaken, but I don't think I am. And that same document also had budgeting for Virtue and Boyd Station, and you know, it was schemed out by year. So that's the source of my confusion. You know, y'all can say it's not planned, or you know, this is not something to take seriously, but obviously I do. We moved out there 25 years ago and loved the nature of the place. You know, the world's changing. You guys are permitting the vast development of Farragut. I was the registrar at the Election Commission when the town of Farragut was, when I was at Farragut High School conducting the election that established the town of Farragut. And so I've been around a long time and seen a lot and how Farragut's developed and the rest of the community. So I understand that, you know, we can't turn back progress. But the biggest opposition that I have to all this is the right-of-way that they want to take for a walking trail across the front of my property. My mailbox, first of all, my house is 1,000 feet from Evans Road. It's way up the hill. And that's about the, you know, I've got a little more property than that, but not much behind me. So, and my mailbox is right on the street. And I had some issues with the town of Farragut when I built my house, and I had to put in a little circle down at the front of my driveway. Ruth Hawk
You got under a minute, if you don't
Good.
mind.
Ruth Hawk forced me to put a little circle in so that the mailman could swing around and be on his way out of my driveway when he posted my mail. So my mailbox is sitting right there at the street. Now, if you, wherever, my mailbox is going to be right next to the walking trail that y'all are proposing. and I'm very opposed to that. If somebody wanted to rifle my mail, there wouldn't be anything I could do about it if I were watching them do it from my house, because I couldn't get down there fast enough to be able to do anything about it. I'm just diametrically opposed to that part of the plan. If they want to improve the road, I'm okay with that. But the walking trail, I am not okay with that.
Yeah.
I want to.
One clarification, I think you might be confused, is the trail with these cross sections is not on your side of the road. It's on the south side.
I live on the north side of the road.
I know, and it's not proposed on the north side.
Well, that's
originally they were looking at the north side,
Yeah.
but we looked at it and said, you know, there's already a trail on the south side at the cottages. Why don't we just continue that on and then cross over to the trail at the farm? That's
There's another alternative too that's even better than that. Behind the Price farm, there's when the farm at when the subdivision south of the Price farm was developed, there's a jog in the trail that circles around behind those houses, and it goes right into the eastern fence line of the Price farm.
Yeah.
You could use that to connect to Evans Road, and
yeah. I mean, that might be an option. If that ever develops, we would ask them to continue that on, and that would be something we would look at.
You wouldn't have to bother any of us. And you wouldn't have to take as much right away. It'd be less expensive. You know,
that would be development driven, but yeah, we would definitely look at that as an option, no doubt.
The final thing I'd be curious about is the cost benefit of this. Who's going to be using this daggone walking trail? You know, I mean, we're not going to develop subdivisions for our property at any time in the foreseeable future. Where are these people coming from that are going to be?
I mean, they would get a lot of use.
I mean, is
because
it
you got McPhee
build it
Road.
and they will come kind of proposition?
Yeah, well, I think they would get more use than you think. But anyway, yeah, that's what we're proposing. It's not on the north side. It was originally, you're right. This is not. This is south side, crosses over to the farm at Willow Creek, and then
still wouldn't want it on the north side in front of my property.
it's not going to be on the north side.
Excuse me, the south side.
Yeah, right.
I still would. I'd be opposed to that.
Okay.
Mark, do we have any other?
Not on Evans, no.
Okay, let's.
Does anybody have any questions on this one? Does this make? The next one is Heron, and really the reason this one's on here is because it's a collector street that is a connector from Founders Park to Parkside Drive. And having used to be a runner running on Heron Road when you get off the sidewalk is not a pleasant experience. So on this road, and this is a minor collector, so if we were to go in and improve this road to the current standards in our subdivision regulations, it would be two 13-foot lanes with extruded curb and a pedestrian facility on both sides of the road. What we're proposing here is to not even change the lane width. It's 18 feet. Keep that.
Gentlemen, could I ask you to take your conversation outside, please? Thank you.
So if we keep the 18-foot lane total width of the street, have a shared use path on it'd be the east side of Heron Road, where the sidewalks are that are part of the development. See, part of Sweetbriar has a sidewalk section, and the Cottage Creek has a sidewalk section. But they end, and what we're looking at there is just extending a shared use path on the east side of Heron Road to tie into the greenway that comes down at the end of Heron Road and goes into the Turkey Creek development. So that one, again, trying to consider the context and not really change the road width at all, because this one doesn't have a whole lot of traffic, and it doesn't have any real opportunity to add a lot more traffic to it because there's not really a lot of undeveloped. What tracks are out there that are, you know, maybe large would only have a couple of houses on them if they were to subdivide. So
There's a lot of residents, when they have events at the Founder's Park, you see a lot of people crossing the street and going up that street.
Oh,
They
yeah.
walk down from there. So there's a lot of residents that use that road.
yeah, yeah. So that's one of the things that we're looking at. Again, we don't have any plans to do anything with this road, but if it comes up in the future that this might be an alternative to what's in our current subdivision regulations. Does anybody have any questions on this one? Then we got North Campbell Station. This is the only arterial road in our cross sections. This is a minor arterial road at this point. And this is north of the Overlook Apartments, because if you go south, all that's been developed as far as the road is much wider. So with this one, we're going to start at the town limits at Ridgeland and looking to the east. You've got basically two 10-foot lanes, no pedestrian facilities on North Campbell Station. And what we were looking at here, because it is a minor arterial and it does have about 9,000 daily trips, at least the last time I had to count on that. And probably a lot more than that now because there's a lot of development down off of Farragut Road. So that one is a little bit more engineered, I guess, if you'd say. But we only have two 11-foot drive lanes with curb and gutter. The sidewalk would be on the north side of the road, and that's the county side, which they didn't require those developments to put a sidewalk in, unfortunately. But there is a lot of undeveloped land on the south side of North Campbell Station Road, and that would be a good candidate for the shared use path, because there is a shared use path that comes up from the storage facility down closer to the Overlook on the south side of Campbell Station Road, and then there's also a trail that was built that stubs into North Campbell Station at Campbell Crossing. So basically, when those tracks get developed, extend that shared use path for that one. I don't have anyone signed up for this road. Does anybody have any questions on this?
I will say when I met, I would go talk to the Ridgeland folks. They were excited to know that there is an opportunity to put in a trail. They would like to connect into the rest of that trail at some point.
Yeah.
They see that opportunity and they
Okay.
want that. So from their perspective, they want to see a
Okay.
connection.
Anybody else have any questions on this one?
Thanks, Mark.
I think the last road, and I do have a couple people that signed up on this one, is Red Mill Lane. This one actually has more traffic than you think. It's got about, well, the count I have is about 1,240 trips per day. It's a local collector, so normally it would be required to, if you redeveloped, two 13-foot lanes with curb and gutter, with extruded curb, excuse me. They have two 12-foot lanes out there currently. So if you're on Red Mill and you're looking east, and then you you make that turn where Midhurst basically becomes Red Mill, then you're looking due south. So the cross section there would not change the road width, still 12-foot lanes. But we would try to work in a shared use path on the east side. And that path is probably going to have to be really close to the road in places, because as you get further north on Red Mill Lane, you run out of real estate. And again, that's something that we would try to minimize the impact to the abutting property owners there, because if you had the regular landscape strip, you could have a lot more impact. So we just have to, again, consider the context, and it may vary from, a 6-foot grass strip to 0 in places, so on that particular road. And this one, there's no plans to do anything with this one either. This may become relevant if the properties on the Biddle Farms develops, and it would be, a way for pedestrians and bicyclists to get from the north down to the sidewalk on Turkey Creek Road and Anchor Park and all those other things and nobody wants to walk in Red Mill Lane. I mean, that's just a death sentence. So it's really a road that needs to be a complete street. I mean, I think there would be a real demand from Kingsgate, frankly, to get down to Anchor Park on a pedestrian facility. And again, these cross sections are trying to lessen the impact of people that front on the road by we're not widening the road to what we are required to in the subdivision regulations, but still, add that facility that it doesn't currently have at some point in the future if it becomes a project that a board in the future wants to consider. So I do have some people that have signed up. Does anybody have any questions on this one?
Mark, the town of Farragut does own property along Red Mill.
Yes, we do.
Particularly where you run out of a lot of real estate is where the town of Farragut.
We have a triangular tract at the end of Concord Landing.
Yeah.
It's just open grass.
That's
right
open
there.
grass.
No trees.
And I've actually walked all these road sections, so I have looked at them in detail.
You live to tell about it.
And this one was a tricky one, I must say. It was a little bit of a challenge. So, but yeah, I think it would be a good candidate for some kind of shared use path at some point in the future. And because I do get a lot of people in Kingsgate that ask, they really regret that they don't have any pedestrian facilities in their subdivision. And these roads that are like Peterson or Red Mill or even Midhurst that have a lot of, fairly busy, they're a little, you don't really feel super safe walking on those streets.
Yeah.
So that's all this is trying to look at. I do have 3 people signed up for this.
Go ahead and have the comments then.
Okay. The first one is B. Like.
Yes, I'm Barbara Like, and I live at 722 Red Mill Lane. And
Can you
that's...
lift the mic up?
Oh, okay. Sorry. Barbara Like, 722 Red Mill Lane. And I am the first house coming off Turkey Creek. It's the pie-shaped lot. And I just want to verify what you all are saying here, because with that pie-shaped lot, you are taking a great deal of my property.
Well, I mean, there's not a specific design on this yet. I mean, that's something that...
And somebody notified me Sunday afternoon about this. And
there's an existing right-of-way, which is actually wider than I thought on this road. It's between 50 and 60 feet.
It's 63
So a lot of what is in this cross-section would be in the existing public right-of-way, especially down closer to Turkey Creek Road. So that's probably in the right-of-way.
See, that's where I am.
Yeah, I know. That's...
And you say there's nothing planned now.
No.
But I went out with my tape measure and measured the length of the street, or the width.
Yeah.
And so you're going to increase the width of the road?
No.
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 No?
No.
Leave the width as
Width is the same. It's just adding a pedestrian facility on the east side of the road.
Which you're speaking of 14-foot minimum.
Well, like I said earlier, the grass strip, we'll have to consider the context of it. It may be a 0 grass strip, or it may be 6 feet. It's not going to...
Well, how can we negotiate?
Well, we'd have to look at that when you get a specific design. These These are conceptual cross-sections that would become regulatory if they're adopted, and they would be the guide that a specific project would use as the general cross-section that we're trying to accomplish. But we would have to, when we look at any kind of road project, we got to look at the specifics of the road and make sure that it takes into consideration the characteristics of the setting.
Well, I
Ms. Light,
understand.
can I just give you some information you may not have?
Please.
There is a, you know what, if you want to come up and look at my computer, this will help you, because I'm a very visual person too. So this is your house.
Yes, it
And
is.
this is the Red Mill Road.
Right.
And this area right here, this is the town of, this, from here to here is the town of Farragut right-of-way.
Right.
So your property starts back here.
Right.
The way I'm looking at this, I think we can fit this trail in our right-of-way. We don't have to purchase property from you or take away your property. We could potentially fit a trail in the current existing right-of-way.
With the grass strip in that section.
With, yes,
With the
by
grass strip
narrowing the grass strip, if we have to, we could work within the right-of-way and not take your property. Because of the way your house sits, those are things that we talk about. This is just a general, hey, this is what we're looking at. We want to adopt this standard instead of looking at what the across-the-board standards are. Those are conversations you have when this is proposed, when they talk about funding, they have to do a design. That's when you get the community and say, okay, because we've done that on Union Road. We had a 6-foot grass strip for most of it, and then the property owner that was most impacted, we narrowed it to 3 feet for them. So it's not like there can't be a conversation about that, but there is right-of-way there.
That's why I'm here tonight.
Yeah.
And I
To-
hope that may help
Yeah.
you out with that too.
Stepping forward and explaining
Yeah,
it.
I think people don't realize that.
I yard.
I understand
Yeah, of
that. We all do.
Working all the
Yeah,
time in
yeah.
it. And,
Well, and that's part of the reason we're doing this, is because we're trying to retain the character of that road to the best of our ability.
Right.
and I was supposed to Turkey Creek, I know the travel, the bike routes.
Yeah.
The walkers and all. But now we don't, I mean, we have some on Red Mill, but it's not like.
No, because
No,
it's
not at all.
it's
There's no
dangerous.
sidewalks.
Yeah,
No,
That's
no
why-
sidewalks.
Those are for the suicidal people
Yeah,
that just want to, hey, I want to.
not a good place to be walking, I can tell you
Do you
that.
have some other speakers, Mark?
Yeah.
Nope.
There will be
Do.
further opportunities to discuss this.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yes, for sure.
If and when.
Yeah.
No
Yeah,
plan.
if and
I
when.
mean, if it ever, yeah.
I'd like to point out, this is not a plan. This is a conceptual cross-section that actually reduces the impact of what otherwise is required today if we were going to go in and improve Red Mill Lane.
That's right.
And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to give the flexibility for certain areas instead of pigeonholing every single road that fits a particular classification and saying you have to do this. Otherwise, we would have a walking trail on one side and a sidewalk on the other side. We're saying, hey, there are some exceptions in the community where we want to try to maintain a little bit more of a rural character, and the one-size-fits-all approach that is on the books today doesn't necessarily fit the roads that we're talking about tonight.
Great. And I appreciate you all explaining that to me. Thank you for
Thank
your
you.
time.
You're welcome.
I was on, there's some misinformation on next door.
Yeah.
I'm just going to tell you, it just is.
Yeah.
It's not factual information.
I'm
Information
so
is
glad I signed up because this relieves me somewhat.
Thank you, yeah. The next speaker I have is Barry Cohn, and then after Barry is Joey Rose. But Barry's first here.
There's misinformation on that.
One of the few times in life that I'm first. Thank you. My name is Barry Cohn. I live at 632 Red Mill Lane, and I appreciate the opportunity to come and talk to you today. I had a long talk with Mark, and it was very helpful, very educational, and very informative. But with that said, and with my 3 minutes or somewhat less now to talk to you, you can hear me okay? I came here to speak in opposition to what's being talked about. There is a discussion about changing the character of Red Mill. There's been a lot of discussion tonight about looking to minimize change in rural character or existing character. Now, I used to have a horse farm up in Maryland, and I have a good idea what makes rural rural. On Red Mill Lane, what makes rural rural? Well, when you turn onto Red Mill from Turkey Creek, what makes rural rural is all the green that you see on the left-hand side. As you come up to the first corner around where the town of Farragut has that triangle of land plus the roadway, right-of-way that runs behind our house, the rural side of the road changes to my side, right there. And what you have are lots of trees. In fact, within the 6 + 8 feet that are on the map, which isn't up there right now, but that are on the map of what you're potentially talking about, I figure you'd lose about 50 trees. So that doesn't keep rural character. It destroys rural character. And that's what I think this would all do. So we have a 12-foot lane. There is really nothing beside it. I live on the road. I think I would respectfully disagree with the characterization that you take your life in your hand to walk down the street. Because I've walked down the street many times. Yeah, I realize you've walked down the street a time, maybe two. But I live there. And, you know, you're not always in the middle of the pavement. There's a lot of grass to walk on. There's a lot of things. Take the dog out. People use it. So I don't think it's as dangerous as everybody says it is. I don't know what would cause this to be on a discussion point today other than the Biddle Farm potential development and creating an egress from that community to Turkey Creek, which I'm not sure this would be the ideal place to do that. And I don't know how many is a lot of people in Kingsview say, well, I really want to go down Red Mill to get down to Anchor Park, which of course, if you're in Midhurst someplace, this is the opposite direction to get to Anchor Park. There are other ways to do it. But I would suggest that there is another solution, at least for the people who want a walkway. Because in my instance, if you took the amount that you're talking about of that land, I hope I can continue for a moment more.
Thank you.
You take about 20% of my front yard, which I think is a significant amount to take, so you can have a walking path. But I think there's a good way to do all this without taking anything really from anybody. You have land right beside me. You have a triangle. You have a road right-of-way that's in existence today. So from the point of the curve of the road of Red Mill, you could put that walking path right up that right-way, come out in the neighborhood right behind us that does not have virtually any traffic because there's just not enough houses in there to have anything that a reasonable person might call traffic. Run through that neighborhood and curve back on, connecting back up around Midhurst, and you'd have zero impact on the rural character, zero impact on the trees that you want to hug, and zero impact on the people who live there. And I think that's not a bad solution. Because before, when you said you have rules, you have the standard. And the standard, let's say the standard is from the perspective of bad to good, and let's say bad is a 10. And let's say from my perspective as someone who lives there, good is 0. So this alternative plan, it might be better than 10, but it still puts it at 9. So in perspective, it is not much of a difference. But there is a good solution, I think, that allows for that to happen. And I'm not quite sure, I don't know why that right-of-way was never put into a road. The road was never built to get from that community out. Obviously, it wasn't needed. And I'm not sure that if Biddle Farms comes along, or when that comes along, I'm sure it will, why there has to be an egress down Red Mill. Because most of the people who are going to live there, they're not going down to Turkey Creek so they can go down Turkey Creek and then come back up to Concord Road. They're going to go out towards Kingston Pike, or they're going to go out towards Concord Road. So
Maybe some. I live in that neighborhood too, and I do use the Red Mill, Turkey Creek, Concord Road. Yeah,
from where?
Turkey Creek Woods.
Okay. If the egress isn't created, if the road
I
isn't
see your point,
created,
though, and
then they're
that's,
not going to use it
and
the
I think
same
that
way.
when that plan comes along, that could be a consideration, and,
Anyhow,
I
that's
guess.
what
Yeah,
I
no,
wanted to
that's-
say. I
good,
appreciate you
and
listening to me. I'm an old man now, and I appreciate you giving me all the time that you did.
Sure, yeah, no problem.
Thank you for your input, Barry, I appreciate it.
I think the trail, that is a good alternative. I do think Red Mill, there needs to be a road connected in the Red Mill somewhere, but the trail is something in the concept plan, the mixed-use town center vision plan. It was a road that stubbed into Bridgewater, but it became a recommended trail, and then that trail would come down through the town's property to tie in. So that would be a way for, like he says, for Biddle to have a trail to get down to Turkey Creek Road. But you still would need, in my opinion, a road connection somewhere for that north-south movement, just because, you know, you give people more options to get around, and you don't clog up certain intersections, which is what we have right now because people don't have a lot of choices. So, but anyway, I have one more speaker, Joey Rose.
Thank you, and appreciate the time. I'm Joey Rose, and I live at 703 Landing Lane. And I'm on the HOA board for the Concord Landing subdivision that's right off of Red Mill. And I'm really here kind of representing them because these flyers were passed around, and I think Marge got one on her mailbox and got everybody upset about this. You've already answered a lot of my questions about not widening the road and all that sort of thing. And I think I understood that you would extend this trail or whatever it ends up being all the way up to the upper end of Red Mill Lane.
Yeah, that's what's in the cross-section.
It would encompass the whole road, the whole Red Mill.
The east side.
The east side.
Yeah.
The east side is the side
Where Concord Landing
the
is.
subdivision
Yeah.
is. Okay, we're like Marge. We have 2 or 3 actually houses. Their backyard is along directly on the road, and they're concerned about losing land just like Marge was. I think she's spoken to that, and I think you've answered those questions. And as far as, I think there was some mention of what you would landscape it with. Would you do trees or shrubs or anything?
Generally, on something like that, we would do street trees that you could, because you don't want to impede visibility.
Yeah, there's a power line right.
Yeah, and we'd have to consider that too, obviously. And it may not be a place where you could put any trees, depending on what the context is.
We're just not long
The
ago.
goal would be to have trees. The real goal would be to minimize the amount of existing trees that get taken out.
Yeah.
Would be the first goal.
Because we have some aging white pine trees along that border.
Yeah.
And like not long ago, a few months ago, one fell and cut out the power for about 8 hours. So I'm all for getting rid of these old trees that are going to fall anyhow, but that answers that question. And then the as far as, I think you've answered everything that I had on my list. I think it's first thing I found out is it's in the planning stages. There's nothing set in stone yet.
It's not even a plan.
It's not even a plan, it's a
It's not even a plan.
Right, it's just, it's kind of.
Well, okay.
Do this big cross-section,
Yeah.
why don't we look at some other opportunities?
Yep.
And even if, like, for instance, your neighbors, if it's so narrow in there, we can actually take the walking trail and actually push it up against the street.
Yeah.
It's not ideal.
It's-
Nobody wants to push a
But
stroller right next to traffic, but it can be done.
It is.
I live on our road,
Yeah.
all the sidewalks are right up against the curb, and we still go on it. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not.
I mean,
It's not something that is ideal, but we can do it.
Yeah,
We don't
I mean,
have to have an 8-foot
Ideally, it would be nice to have a sidewalk on the other side, but then down at Turkey Creek Road, there's a culvert that goes under the road. That would be hard to
Well, there's a
negotiate.
ditch on the other side of Red Mill from where you guys are, and topographically,
Yeah.
That would be a challenging
Yeah.
site. It can be done.
I understand that. but-
Mr. Rose, there's about a 15-foot right-of-way between the back of the road to the back of the property. I'm looking at 717. It's about 15 feet of right-of-way.
Yeah, there's
between-
3 lots that are
Yeah.
affected, 1, 2, and 3. And the lots are not large because it's a.
Yeah, it's condos.
It's condos.
Yeah.
And, most of the people in there are elderly, even older than me. But, and they get upset when they talk about taking their backyard, so-
Mr. Rose, can I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
Do you feel like that flyer that was put out for y'all misinformed you?
I think it was very disruptive.
Yeah, so that's for point of public record as we're here doing the
Okay,
people's
I don't know
business.
who's responsible for it.
I certainly would love to see that flyer, and know where it came from, but
Okay.
maybe not tonight.
I didn't get one because I live on the interior.
Got it.
And coincidentally, he mentioned cutting through the back. That goes right behind my house. I wouldn't like a walking trail right behind my house.
Well, it's unfortunate there's folks out there scaring other folks.
Yeah, yeah. But I don't know really. I was informed when this subdivision was developed that the developer traded any rights to that road in order to develop the subdivision. So that old right-of-way doesn't even exist anymore, I don't think. But it'd be something to look into. That, as far as I know, that cut through across the back of the subdivision in that open space, that open field is my side yard. I mean, I like having it, but, and I understand it belongs to the town, but according to the plat, the only things that are running behind my house and on down are drainage easements. So I don't think that would qualify to possibly put in a trail, but that's something you all would have to decide.
We aren't even discussing that.
We're not
trail
even-
tonight. We don't even have a plan for that trail. That's so far down
Yeah.
the road that
Okay.
who knows when that would even come about, to even
All right.
discuss that.
Well, I appreciate your time, and that's
Thank
all
you.
I had. I do have one other thing, but it's a different matter. Do you have time at the end?
Is it on this topic? Because we've
No.
got to keep.
No.
If you want
We've
to,
got
if you want to say something under citizen forum later on,
Yeah, we
you
have
can do
2
that.
other items of business we need
Yeah,
to
because
address
that,
tonight.
I mean, Red Mill Lane is, Ms. Pavlin is right. All of these issues have a common denominator, is speeding. They're all racetracks.
Mr. Rose, if you want to speak to some issue, can you just put his name on the back of a card so he can speak at Citizen Forum?
Yeah, that's fine.
Just
I'll-
stick around, we've got Citizen
Okay.
Forum, you
All
can.
right. Yeah, it's very brief, but it's about traffic.
Whenever you're ready, Mark, we'll
I'm
go
ready.
to agenda item number 7. And sorry, that's what I thought everybody signed up to speak to.
7. Yeah, 7's. Okay.
Agenda item number 7, appointment of Planning Commission representative for the Stormwater Advisory Committee.
Okay, yes, this committee has 7 members, and the board is required to appoint 1 member from the Planning Commission. I think Louise has been the member in the past. This is really your all's decision. I don't have a recommendation on this, but you all do need to appoint or reappoint a representative as the Planning Commission's person for this particular committee.
No one wants to do it, I'll do it, but.
Motion to appoint Louise Pavlin.
Second.
Second. Stormwater Advisory Committee.
Second.
Okay.
Okay, Mark, we have a motion. and a
Scott
second
seconded it.
To
Okay.
appoint
Louise.
Commissioner Pavlin to be the Planning Commission representative for the Stormwater Advisory Committee. All those in favor say yes?
Yes.
Yes.
I abstain.
All the noes, no nos, 1 abstention. Mark, let the record
abstain.
show that Commissioner Pavlin has been appointed as our representative to
Okay.
the Planning Commission for the Stormwater Advisory Committee with a vote of 7 yes, 1 abstention.
Okay, good.
Thank you, Louise.
You're welcome.
Okay, and Mark, do we have any utilities that require approval this evening?
No, we don't.
We don't, okay. Joey, would you like to step back up and,
Yeah, this
see,
is-
we told you we'd make it quick for you. How about that?
So I've been living in that residence now for 2 years, and I've noticed it's a dead end with a cul-de-sac, and I'm sure it met the size requirements for when it was built. But as I understand, those are sized for fire trucks so that fire trucks can turn around in the cul-de-sac.
Yep.
We have an enormous amount of people driving in the subdivision, cars, trucks, 18-wheelers, turning around and going out. I think, from watching them, I believe that's something connected with GPS that's directing them to turn around there if they've taken Turkey Creek Road by mistake. So I think GPS is directing them in there. I didn't pay attention that much to cars and pickup trucks, but an 18-wheel truck, there's no reason they need to be in there at all. It's actually longer than a fire truck. You know, they have trouble getting in there and turning around, but they just come in, turn around, and leave. So I don't know what you check into for that.
Do you have does it say, is there a no outlet sign in the front of your neighborhood?
Yes, yeah.
You guys could also maybe add a no trucks sign. I mean, you have an HOA.
Yeah.
You'd run to make sure engineering's on board with it.
Yeah.
That might be something that you guys could
Yeah,
do.
I mean, I don't mind, cars and pickups and, and delivery trucks, they have to get in, turn around, but
Maybe no semi-trucks or something.
18-wheelers is just too big.
I agree.
And it's not just once, it's several times I've noticed. I think GPS is directing them in there to turn around.
Okay. Yeah,
So I don't know how you check into that.
You can control Google Maps.
Okay, we've got one more.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joey. Jeannie, if you would. Hi, good evening.
Hello, Jeannie Barkowski, Bel Air Neighborhood, Crestview Road. I am very saddened and deeply disgusted tonight at the number of people who came here to speak based on fear-mongering and false information that they were fed via Nextdoor and flyers put out in their neighborhoods. It is not a good indication of the type of person the person is who does this. It's wrong, it's mean, and it's nasty. And I, for one, as a citizen and a resident of the community, I'm sick and tired of it. I at one time drank the Kool-Aid of a small group of people of a certain organization until I started figuring out something was wrong, and I started asking questions. And I started doing my research, and I started reaching out to the town elected officials, to the commission, appointed commissions, to the town staff, and I started asking questions of the people who were actually involved in the process. I started attending town meetings. I started attending staff developer meetings. I started looking at the agenda every week on the website that you can see what meetings are coming up and what they are about. So I'm just going to say flat out to my neighbors and our community, don't drink the Kool-Aid. Stand up for yourself. Stand up for our community. And do not let these people fill your heads with these ridiculous, horrible thoughts and turn your hearts mean and nasty like theirs. Now, first of all, I am 100% behind the First Amendment. If they don't like us and the people who live here, that's their decision. I don't have to like them either. But for the most part, I love our town and I love the people who live here, and I'm proud to live here. And just sitting here tonight, I have to admit The fed up factor kept growing and growing and growing, and I decided I wanted to say something. And part of that is thank you to everyone who serves on this committee, to our elected officials and to our town staff and to all the many, many volunteers who help and support our town and care about our community, because they are the majority of our town. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeannie. Can I get an amen? Amen. Please? Somebody? Anybody? Okay. Jeannie, I just want to say too, though, as long as I've been on this planning commission, I've seen your metamorphosis, if you want to call it that, and it's citizens like you that we need plenty of, and we do have plenty of them in this town, and I appreciate your kind words. I think we can all agree with that.
They were heartfelt.
Thank you. Okay, the time is approximately 8:34 p.m., and without objection, the April 17th, 2025 Municipal Planning Commission is now adjourned.